Welcome. This particular workshop one is designed to give us the vision and the big picture. It will sometimes feel overwhelming because there's a lot of pieces to it. That's what we're going to work out in workshop 2 and 3. And a lot of you have already been doing a lot of this work, and so some of the pieces are going to sound quite familiar, and some of the elements will be new and adding, and we're going to try to give you time in your group as we go through the day to sit and chat. What do we like about this? What might we use? Take some notes. And it will be kind of a lightning round. It'll be like a few minutes in each of those conversations. So as we go along, you're able to kind of connect with the information as we go. It's really, really exciting. This state has data for you to use in ways that no other state has. It's amazing. I've been around the country, so I love being in Massachusetts a lot for this data. But you're going to find through our conversation how important that's going to be, and usable and actionable. So you're entering 3 sets of workshops, right? So today is the vision and overview. We're going to spend workshop 2 on the design of a full college and career advising program. It's your scope and sequence. Today we're looking at the parts that are going to go into that scope and sequence. We're going to be talking about kind of what's the vision and the sense of how we're shifting away from traditional ways of thinking about career development and focusing instead on more of a personalized, student-driven approach. So it's going to be a shift in practice. Okay, but when we then come back in workshop 2, you're going to start looking at one grade level to say, how can we really plan this out and learn that as your own set of skills in the workshop, and then you can take that back and continue building as a team. And then in workshop 3, you're going to come back and we're going to do an implementation plan. You know, it's great to have good ideas, but if we can't explain it to other people, if we can't provide the data to show its impact, at the end of the day, these things go away. How many school counselors have been working with career development and the whole ILP movement for many years? Yeah, and this is probably the first time you've gotten your administrator to the table to hear what it's all about. And this is what's so exciting. So we have counselors in the room that have been waiting years to have this conversation. It's very exciting. But that implementation plan is going to be critical to the success of the whole group. So those are the kind of 3 things that we're looking at there. You've got your goals. We want it, as we've said, the overview of what this is about. We're going to talk about college and career advising and MyCap. MyCap is the My Career and Academic Plan. So we'll talk about the differences and how they connect and what they're about. We want to talk about this in relation to some other very key initiatives that the state has going on. This isn't something that is an add-on. This is the integrator. This is the thing, this is the synthesizer activity. This is what first starts to bring together this whole college and career readiness piece we've been talking about. It brings together, the school counselors have a Massachusetts School Counselor 2.0 guide. We call it the Mass Model 2.0. It's based on the national model. It's awesome. This integrates that and helps really blast that off. And then also our state has begun this new initiative called the High Quality College Career Pathways. This is in large part due to the funding that they received from the chief state school officers. So let's just kind of walk quickly through. I want to make sure I read through what this whole college and career readiness definition is, because it's very critical to the work that we're doing. The way we define college career readiness in our state is it's an individual that has the requisite knowledge, skills, and experiences in the academic, personal, social, and workplace readiness domains to successfully navigate to completion an economically viable career pathway and engage in informed and effective civic and democratic life. First thing I want you to see in that is we're not talking about helping them make the right decision about a career. We're helping build their capacity to navigate not only through the academic opportunities that are right there in front of them, but to connect to those post-secondary pathways and connect and keep connecting as they move through life. This is a much bigger picture of what we're doing in our state. So it's a very exciting piece on that. The Mass Model 2.0, talk to your school counselor. They should know all about it. Yes, you do. I know you do. I love this model. I'm very excited about it. But what's awesome about it is school counselors are basically there to lead your school reform efforts. Every one of our schools needs to improve. If you've got 90% of your students going to college, I can guarantee 90% are not finishing. So we've got something to work on there. If we're having attendance issues, they're there to help work on that. But to do that, we have to start with the data that's going on in your school. And Niall and Jen, that's what they're going to talk about after lunch. How to help get an idea of where in that pipeline of development and success do we need to be focused on as a school, and that's what the Mass Model is all about. Starting with that, how do we design a personalized college and career advising program to help make that actionable around those particular goals. And I love this piece. So we've talked, you've already raised your hands if you're one of the schools that have been designated for these very important pathway areas. And what is exciting here is that we're breaking down this whole process into these 6 buckets. And even if you're not one of the designated schools, we want you to think about these 6 buckets as we're going along in the design of your college and career advising program. So you see advising as the first piece. That's important. That's why we're here. This is the foundation for everything. And that's what we're talking about. But we also have, as we're designing this program, we also need to be keeping in touch with what is the local labor market needs. Not that we're here to help all of our students go into those jobs, but we can use those local labor market opportunities in order to connect them to work-based learning, learn about how to think about that information as they make their decisions about where they want to go in the world, as they establish career and life goals. And we actually have for you, the state has already done the work. All the regions have gone through and identified what the labor needs are of every region that's here. And you'll be able to go in. And so all we're saying is, as we go to design, why don't we focus on a few of those through their exploration? Have them learn about what's in their backyard. For our rural areas in Massachusetts, this is critical in terms of the brain drain. We want them to see a future in their backyard. So by understanding what the labor opportunities are, they can see that they have a future that's going on here. Integrated instruction. So what are the quality learning that they're getting? I know we're creating in the career pathways instructional processes, but we should also be thinking about the alignment between the competencies, not the seat time, but the competencies that they're learning in school and out of school, and how those align to their career goals. And so we need to be thinking obviously in terms of the design of that instruction as a school, but we'll also be talking about college and career advising as a way of helping youth drive that and helping families become aware of what that's about. Work-based learning, very critical. And not just, we're going to talk about immersion as a very important part of this. So it is about paid and unpaid work opportunities and volunteer opportunities, but it's also about just learning and having adults from the world of work connect with our youth and explain to them how much they are excited about them thinking about their areas, right? That caring, encouraging adults is going to pop through a lot. We also need them to be thinking about credentials. There's a lot of credentials they can get even while they're in high school that can give them employment. We'll talk about a case where the young woman got her dietary aid certification so she could begin working in a hospital, and that became the on-ramp to a nursing degree. Okay, so we think about getting them focused on thinking through this is great, but also some of our students aren't going to be wanting to go to college, and that may not be the best place for them. They may want to be a firefighter, and the idea of a 4-year college just doesn't connect well to that. How do we help them see that their next step is a credential or some kind of certification in a program, and make that part of our dialogue, and actually value that and help our parents see the value of that? And then finally, the post-secondary linkages as a whole. We're using post-secondary a lot. I know we want all of our students, that we have an attitude that it's all college, but post-secondary includes 2-year, 4-year certifications, credentials, and we want to kind of keep that open. Not that we're telling students where to go. We want them to understand all of these pathways and the value and the economic implications of these different pathways. Okay, so that becomes the idea. So while if you're a school that's been designated, you're already working on these, what we're saying is this is a beautiful framework for us all to be thinking about as we design the program and curriculum. We will have questions. Ask them. If there's questions that feels like they're really big, we have a parking lot, so you've got your little notepad, and you can put it up there later, and we can see what's going on. I've got lots of people in the room that are watching me. And if there's a question that comes up, they're going to stop and pause and say, hey, we should really get to this right now. So make that part of the dialogue, okay? We do want to spend as much time in your groups working and talking about things. So that may be a point where a question comes up and you want to ask, but certainly stop me. If there's something that's feeling confusing, I thought this was a math instructional program today. If there's questions like that, we should ask those early. Okay, what you're looking at right now is the big framework that's going to kind of organize what we're doing. When we get to the end of the day, we actually have this fleshed out for you to look at as an example. But what we're trying to think about is personal social domains, career development education, academic college, and career planning. We're going to go through all of these domains today to give you examples of what we mean by each of these, so that when it's time to design a curriculum, you've got ideas about the kinds of lessons that we'll be using. But what we also want you to be focused on is we need objectives. We need to be thinking about what should our 9th graders be able to do around college and career readiness, around this whole college and career advising. What are those key outcomes? So that if we're doing activities, they're no longer random acts of career development. They're actually targeted, okay? And it may mean to have some honest conversations with your colleagues about things you've always done, but they may not fit with the objectives, okay? So we're gonna help you think through the mapping of that, and when you leave today, the first task will be to really sit down and think more thoroughly about that, and so we come back to workshop 2, we're ready to start moving. I'm gonna pause for a second. Is there any thoughts on this? I'm gonna actually end the show for a second and show you a fun slide, or a fun little movie. See how this goes. One of the things that happens when we talk about these topics a lot is that, just pause here for a second so I can get the sound on, is that we have lots of school needs, but we also have schools that are at the high end. They're putting out students all the time, and they're saying, why do I need to be focused on college career advising? Because, quote, they're going to college. So here's a video that we can share with them.
Okay?
Okay, Mom, Dad, relax. I'm gonna make the most of these 4 years in school. I have a plan. Freshman year, I'm only gonna take intro courses or easier classes. Just kind of like whatever I feel like. Definitely nothing with a writing assignment, though.
But I thought you were majoring in English.
No, that's just gonna be my first major. Sophomore year, I plan on changing it like at least 3 more times. And eventually, I'm just gonna choose the one that I have the most number of credits in and has the least number of classes before noon. Which actually won't even make much of a difference anyway, because I won't be going all that much.
You won't be going to classes?
Academics aren't necessarily gonna be my focus, if you know what I mean.
Your mother and I think that you should have a more well-rounded experience than just partying.
No, of course, Dad. I'm on top of it. Junior year, I'm gonna study abroad in a foreign country that is rich with culture. But I'm only gonna hang out with other Americans. Mom, come on. Senior year, I'm gonna turn it all around. I'm gonna take a summer course, I'll change my major one more time, and then maybe I'll have enough credits to almost graduate on time. Almost.
Well, as long as you graduate with a plan, that's all that matters.
Well, after graduation, I'm gonna realize that the real world and trying to find a job where I can pay off tens of thousands of dollars in student debt is just way too scary. So I'm gonna go into grad school, I'm gonna hide out there for a couple of years, and that's where I'm really gonna rack up the debt. Like, rack it up, you guys. I am so excited for my future. Rack up.
So there you go. Put that on your website. I'm serious. Help our parents understand why we're doing this. My son's going, yeah, I know your daughter's going, yeah, but, right? It is totally the truth. So, and given that we've got 1.3 trillion in growing student debt in this country, this is a crisis. And so when we did our national research, that's what we found. There were 2 sets of students, those that got career development and those that were going to college. And the ones that were going to college had no clue what they were doing. They were less academically resilient. All those social emotional learning skills, they didn't have goal setting, they didn't have motivation, they didn't see the relevance. All of those things we know they need to be successful in life were not happening. But those who got access to this college and career advising, they all of a sudden started becoming more proactive, more resilient, more self-directed. So it's actually even more than just simply having a plan. It's about how I'm organizing myself in the world. And that's why the word navigate is so important in that college and career readiness definition, because it's about how do we help them begin to drive their own process. So it's a great video to get us all on the same page very quickly as to why we're doing this. So I want you to, in your group right now, get to know your team a little bit. We're gonna do this in 5 minutes, so this is not one of those long-winded lectures, just the facts. Thinking about how many of you ended up where you felt you started, how many of you had a plan, but we're also really interested in this whole idea of what skills did you get as you were leaving high school. What are those competencies you had? No laughing, this is a serious conversation. And just think about through that and you can see the point, right? Are we focusing on grades or are we focusing on building their capacity for success? And that's one of the shifting points we're going to have in college and career advising. So go ahead and take 5 minutes just to talk amongst yourselves. How many of you stayed in the career that you initially decided when you went into college? I'm going into college to be a, how many of you did that? Outstanding. How many of you changed just twice? Changed your mind a couple times. How many changed 3 times? 4 times. Oh no. 5. How many are still changing your mind? You're still not quite sure where you're going. Absolutely. Absolutely, right? Okay. So you get a sense of what we mean by navigation in that kind of statement, right? Yeah. That becomes an issue. Certainly. And we don't want our youth going into college knowing exactly what they want to do or going into that post-secondary. What we want is that we're going to use the word career and life goals. So they don't know all the opportunities they're going to be opening up. We need flexibility and adaptability. Okay. Now, if they're going to be in STEM, if they've decided they want a STEM career, which is, again, an area. It's not just, doesn't have to just be focused on a single one. That whole cluster, yeah, they've got to make that decision early on because they've got to get through that. Through middle school, they got to be ready to get that algebra done so that by the time they enter high school, they're going to get through calculus and physics and stuff. We need that. So there is some place where that is, and when, in our research, that's what we found. Those that clearly had a plan and where it was at early on, they were generally in the STEM fields. So we need all youth to know that because there's major decision points if they don't think they like math, you know, and yet we know they're talented. They've been doing this whole robotics thing. Any of your students playing on, what is it, the Fortnites and the Minecraft, right? Okay, so there's some engineers in there. And so those engineers need that math in order to really showcase their skill sets and what they can do. So we need them to know that right away, and we need their families to know that so they can recognize the implications. Skills. What was the most important skill you learned in high school? What was that competency you came out with? I have an answer to that, but I want to hear what you've got. Any ideas? What were some skills? Socializing. I can talk to people, especially in the hallways. Maybe not so much in class after that second time I got caught. So socializing is a big one. We got to get along with people. And I love the project-based learning that's going on in schools because it forces that sense of connecting, which is a critical workforce skill right now. That's what employers are saying they need really badly is people who can work with other people. What's another skill you came out with?
Student leader.
Student leader. So leadership. There are leadership opportunities, right, that are important. Yes?
Teamwork.
Teamwork is an important piece. Not just being able to socialize, but being able to collaborate and being able to negotiate and compromise. Big skills.
Self-advocacy.
Yeah, self-advocacy is an important one. Especially as we start working with our youth with disabilities, they need to learn how to become an advocate for the issues and challenges and accommodations they might need as they move through into higher ed as well as they get into employment.
Time management.
Yeah, we wish they did. Did you learn that? Wow. That is outstanding. Okay, so at break, for those of you that are still needing help, we have an expert in the room here. Yes, there is a need for time management, and certainly that becomes a lifelong piece of balancing that out, but that's a good one. Other skills? Yeah.
Communication skills.
Communication and the broad definition. Yep, how to communicate, not just orally written, as well as public speaking and some of these other areas, critical life skills that we need. So here's the skill I came out with. And it goes to that whole idea that it takes about 10,000 hours of practice to become a master at it. Sitting and paying attention. That was the big skill I think I got out of high school, right? Yeah, and I think all of us did, because you're doing it again. You're all great at it. You can tell we got masters in this room. So just one of those other skills that not necessarily works on the whole life thing, but great. Thank you. Those are awesome. So let's move into this whole idea then of what is college career advising. What is this whole MyCap thing about? And we're going to spend some time talking about it as a process as well as some of the product elements to that. So we talked a little bit about individualized learning plans. That's the national word that's used. It's a terrible word. When the state did their report, the first recommendation was get a new title. ILP really, and they had another word for it, but we couldn't print it, is really bad, okay? So individualized learning plans, every state has a different name. Individualized career and academic plans in Colorado and Oklahoma. We have academic career plan in Wisconsin, education and career action plan. I love that, action plan in Arizona. The Peach State Plan, any idea what state would have called it a Peach State Plan? Yeah, how's that working? Yeah, not really descriptive, no. They eventually changed it, but yeah, just Peachy. That was the Just Peachy Plan. How's it going? So everyone has a different name. We're calling we're using college career advising as a way of talking about the curriculum that you're engaged in delivering and facilitating. And we're talking about MyCap, My Career and Academic Plan, as the student's experience and the family's engagement in those activities and the products that they're creating out of that. Okay, so the student experience, and they're creating their life goal, their career and life goals, they're putting together academic plans, they're looking for learning opportunities, they're selecting into courses, they're doing things as a result of this college and career advising activities that you're helping to facilitate. Okay, that's where we talk about the MyCap. And we're going to house all of that in an e-portfolio, which I'll show you an example of, and that becomes the document. We need a place where everything they're doing and all the exciting stuff is housed in an electronic format, because if it's in your folder inside your classroom, it doesn't help. We found that out. The paper portfolios are not so good. The online portfolios give them access throughout their whole career in school. Okay, so that's what, and we'll talk some about that. So when we talk about the college and career advising, again, we're talking about the career development lessons. We're talking about a scope and sequence. We're talking about a whole school implementation, by the way. School counselors cannot deliver this. It has to be whole school. When it was done by school counselors only, and we did our national research, worked with 4 states and really went in and investigated, in that state where they hired one person to do it for the whole school, the parents came away saying it felt like speed dating. They would go and meet with the counselor and they would say, oh yeah, your child's a this, go, okay, next. And it was just, that's not what this is about, right? This is about really getting to know the child getting to know themselves, and the family becoming part of a team. And so the whole school, what that does is it allows educators, your teachers, paras, others, whoever it might be, to work usually in an advisory. You can think of there's other ways to do it. It can be done, but in a small group somehow, in a small group setting, where they are now leading that group and facilitating. We don't use the word guidance anymore, by the way. It's facilitating this discovery process. And we're going to show you that the teachers do not have to be experts in career development to make this happen, because we have these great online systems that you have access to. And we'll show how it goes. But you know what they do need? They need a caring and encouraging adult. That's the magic that underlies the college and career advising program. That's the part that we need to really make sure we focus. The content is really important, and that's what we're going to design. But at the end of the day, we need an adult who believes in that child, sees that future, sees the capabilities they have, and is encouraging them to think beyond what they may think about themselves. And we'll go more into that as we kind of go through the discussion. We want that same parallel process when we bring employers in touch with our youth. We want that caring and encouraging quality. So just having an employer come and give a lecture to the whole place, that doesn't do it. We need that personal opportunity for them to really connect with and have the students lead some of those discussions. So this idea then of the college and career advising as a whole school implementation, we're all getting behind it, we're all involved in it. We have these small pockets of advising where a caring and encouraging adult is leading and facilitating, but it's a class or it's a group. So now we have peers supporting each other. I've seen some amazing things in Massachusetts of how students stand up to want to talk about their peer, not about their own stuff, but they want to talk about what their friend just did. It's awesome, okay, and this does it. It also breaks down the silos between special ed and general ed, okay? This is amazing. All of a sudden, we're working as a community. We all need to work together. And the career tech ed integrates into this. It all comes together through this process. We are going to leave this PowerPoint. I'm going to go into the Mass CIS here to do some demonstrations to show you what a portfolio looks like so we can get a sense of the documentation. I know you have these within, some of you are using Naviance, okay? Some of you are using the Mass CIS. Anyone using MIFA Pathway? Okay, that's a third one. So MIFA Pathway and Mass CIS are free access. I'm going to be using the Mass CIS today to show you what the portfolio looks like, but the assumption is, of course, you'll be using your own system to do this, but it just is easier. And if you want to follow along in the Mass CIS and you don't have an account, I'm going to do a few things in Mass CIS. I've given you a username and a password that you can use to log in. They finally just gave me one that I could use forever because I keep calling them. Yeah, I need to do another training. Can you give me? So this one should work for you. What we want to do is explore how this portfolio, this kind of what we call the MyCap document, the documentation process, how is it, what is the value it has over some of the paper versions, but also just how is it different than other portfolios that you're using in school, okay? So I want to just take a few moments to look through that. Okay, so under Mass CIS, if you're going in there, we're just going to go just show you kind of what goes on. In the portfolio, they're able to do activities that can be saved. So if they do any assessments, they should be automatically saved within the system. So in the MassCIS, I've done some skills, some work importance locator, some reality checks. We've also got issues like resumes that can be built out of the portfolio. So when they put the information in about themselves, they can click a button that will generate a resume. So that helps facilitate that whole process. They're never starting from scratch. We need them to plan out their courses. The 4-year course plan should be something that we can find then within the portfolio. So we're going to be doing college and career advising lessons, but what the student is gaining then is this MyCap, and in the product piece of it, it's stuff that goes into their portfolio. And we want to be thinking throughout today, what are those artifacts? What are those things that are going to show up in the portfolio as a result of the different lessons we're doing? We want to be able to map that out. So we're going to have discussion on that as we go through. The resume we just talked about, how do I create a career plan is something that's inside this portfolio. So I can create a personal learning plan. So now we're getting into some of the goal setting pieces. I can put my goals in, I can put my education plans. So it becomes a place where as they're starting to think about their future and what they need to be doing right now to start preparing for it, things they've looked at, what the portfolio is designed to be is the place that houses that. What's the value of that? Any ideas? What is it? What's helpful about having it in an online type format? Any thoughts? Access. They don't have to do this just in school. What else? Any other values? What's that? It follows you when you leave. As long as you have access to that system, it should follow you when you leave. So in Massachusetts, it's there. Yep, because it's yours. And in Naviance, they have the ability to help make sure it follows the student if they leave the school. They should be able to access their account. It's one of the challenges we have with a lot of the portfolio systems, but they're aware of it and they're working with it. You want to engage parents, right? Isn't there a press that we got to engage parents? What better way than to send them with a homework assignment to go down and show them what they've done on the portfolio? And have parents, they need these skills too. So the parents can actually start going through this system as well. The other thing which you're not seeing on here is the ability to email a link to the portfolio so the admissions officer, the employer can see the kinds of things they've done. Okay? You're also able to put on some you're able to put in some video of yourself. So you did that classroom presentation, that can go in. So it's a pretty powerful source. Okay, so a lot of things that are going on in here. Every system will be able to tell you how many megabytes, gigabytes, I don't know how many bytes that they would have available for storage, and they'll be able to tell you whether they can handle the video and the different documentation. Certainly PDFs, okay, that you'd be able to load in. So as you think about artifacts, you might have them do a written project. Either A, they copy and paste it in, or B, you have a PDF copy and they upload it to it. So this is part of the stuff we have to learn here, is kind of how we're going to manage that process. But what we want to do for today is be thinking down the road of what products they're going to be creating. The power of the MyCap is not this portfolio. The power is the process, okay? And that's what's most important. This is not about checking a box of activities. It's about engaging youth in a process that's going to enable them to start thinking for themselves and finding relevance in the things they're doing. So you have in your workbook on page 19 a poster, and I want you to take a few minutes with your group, and I want you to look at this poster and think about the different topics that are on there, and I want you to reflect on how is this similar or different from what we're already doing. Okay, because it's a nuanced shift, but this is the power. This is something that Wisconsin put together as they've been doing it, and it reflects the national kind of feeling about what the MyCap is really doing. So page 19, take a few moments, and then we'll get back. Ready?
For us, we're a small school, so the whole concept is supported by mutual adult relationships, which is our strength.
Yeah.
We do a nice job of that.
So the meaningful adult relationships, that caring, encouraging adult.
Yes, and making sure that every student has at least one advocate in the building.
Yes.
We talked about, we do some reflection of strength and interest sort of in the beginning, 9th and 10th, and it just goes away.
Okay.
You know, we
So a little bit of reflection, but maybe, and that's going to be a theme. We're going to talk about the idea that traditionally school counselors, you've been very good at giving interest assessments, but that kind of steps over the personal exploration of who am I, right? It's letting an instrument tell us who we are, and we've got issues with that. We'll talk about that. But this idea of who am I, what's my talent becomes the question. What's my talent? We mentioned Minecraft. We've talked about Fortnite. There's talent. There's skill sets associated with the things they do. Do you have? Yeah, I'll repeat it. I'll repeat it. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think at our school, we're more focused on 11th and 12th, like the upper, like,
Okay.
you know, it's like,
So
okay, what are you
focus on
gonna
11th
do
and
with
12th.
college, and, you know, there's
Yeah.
not enough done in the lower.
In the 9th and 10th grade. Thank you. That happened in our first group as well, was the realization that we do a lot in the 10th, 11th and 12th. In fact, a lot of the online systems, those using Naviance, they were built for that, right? They're awesome at being able to help us prepare for that transition, but we haven't done as much at the 9th and 10th grades. And so and that's why we're gonna talk about a whole scope and sequence to really push that out. Let's take one more idea in terms of what you saw in the piece. There's one piece in there I haven't seen you remark on yet. Well, all right, I'll give you the answer. So I think the most remarkable part of what the MyCap is doing is it's student-driven. That is a tremendous change. I know we are great at doing this for students, creating this pathway for students, giving them these opportunities, but along the way we forget to explain why they should care. We just assume it's not, everyone wants to get a high school degree. We just assume that. And what are you saying? Why? What student-driven means is they're discovering their talent. They're discovering that the world out there has great opportunities that they're now excited about. And then what they're discovering is the relevance of all of those great opportunities you're creating to helping them align their learning pathways now to navigate towards those career and life goals. That's what it becomes about. The students take over the process. They start telling you the classes they need to take. We had one high school in the Midwest, by the way, school counselors, that when fall started, they had no course changes. Not one course change. How many did I say they had? 0 course changes. Why? Because the students are driving the process. They are in spring getting ready for the fall. They've got the 4-year plan and they're adjusting it well ahead of time to make sure it's aligned with where they're going. How awesome is that? Amazing. The power that happens when students start driving this process is they start looking for out-of-school learning opportunities. They start to say, oh, I need to learn I need to know if I can do this. And they start finding the volunteer activities. They start building it. I've got tons of stories around these. And we'll, from time to time, if we're on schedule, we'll get a few of those in there, but like that. But that one of 0 course changes I thought was just amazing. Okay, so we've got another fun video. What I want to do is show you from MIFA Pathways. So MIFA Pathways are a financial aid organization here in the state, and they have a system, and it's coming along. They've just launched a new system. Give them time. It's beautiful, it looks nice, and its functioning is going to continue to expand. But what I love about what they did is they created this video about what the process is about, and they did a nice job of wrapping it all up in a 3-minute type little video. So it's a nice one to kind of get a full essence. I know some of you are trying to parallel this with Naviance. Try that. If it doesn't work, that's okay too. It's complicated. As you just said, some of you have been focusing on the 11th and 12th grade. A lot of the pieces we're going to describe is also 9 through 12. So there may be elements in there that are hard to resonate with, but you'll have time between workshop 1 and 2 to figure that out. Okay, that's going to be one of the homework assignments, is to learn all the features within your system.
Welcome to MIFA Pathway, your plan for the future. The interactive destination for Massachusetts students grades 6 to 12, plotting their educational and career plans, and the school counselors and parents helping them on their way. You'll be able to make this journey entirely yours in several ways. Your school counselor can assist you as you create your own unique profile, an overview of what makes you, you. And your first step is building your very own digital portfolio, an ever-changing and growing visual snapshot of your interests, skills, and activities. Watch as your digital portfolio grows to encompass more of what excites and appeals to you. The information you add to your profile also triggers the creation of your very own resume, capturing what you've done and summarizing what you have to offer. You'll want to keep your profile up to date as you gain more experience in and out of school. Use MIFA Pathway to get to know yourself better through informative quizzes and questionnaires that reveal your interests and skills and how they match up with particular careers. Are you artistic or analytical? Could you be a future designer or an accountant? Dive in. You might be surprised what you discover about yourself. Search a wide range of career categories to discover the types of jobs associated with your interests and skills. Explore what it takes to be prepared for jobs that may appeal to you. Talk with your school counselor about how you might come up with a plan to develop the skills and knowledge necessary to better position yourself for success on the career path of your choice. Also, when it comes to researching colleges, MIFA Pathway allows you to assemble appealing options that meet your preferred criteria, like location, size, or setting. See how colleges stack up against each other by comparing details about cost, academics, and even admissions difficulty. And when it comes to navigating how to apply to college, MIFA Pathway is the place to be. We'll walk you through every step of the application process. You'll learn about the various ways to pay for school, including how grants and scholarships might make attending even the college of your dreams a real possibility. So go ahead, explore MIFA Pathway today to help you plan and prepare for your future.
So I think it does a nice job of putting together the whole concept of what we've been discussing, and it shows how the MyCap is really about the student's experience in this and the kinds of things we're doing. When we're creating our college and career advising lessons, what we're trying to do is to facilitate that, all of those elements we're talking about. And you can see they did the whole, all the way through the lifespan of that high school, right? Where do we want to start in 9th grade? Some ideas, 10th, 11th, and 12th. We are going to go into some things, but I wanted to give you a little bit of time just to kind of talk amongst yourselves about what you're seeing as we're discussing this. How does it mean? School counselors have been doing this and are aware of it. Some of you in the room have not seen all of this. It's a great time for them to maybe explain a little bit of what you're already doing in this, how this is a little bit different, what you can learn from it, and just a very brief kind of thing. So it might be a time then just to let your school counselors kind of shine a little bit about how they've been doing this already and what we're learning today and how it's going to facilitate. So let's take 5 on that. Does that sound good? One of the things we want you to see is this framework again, and remember that this is what's going to be the organizing framework, and all the things we're talking about we want to put into these kind of boxes. We want to be thinking in these boxes. The activities we do will actually go across these, but these are the major domains. The personal social skills, which we're going to focus on social emotional learning. The career development education, where we're going to talk about career awareness, career exploration, career immersion. And then the academic planning, college planning, and career planning as 3 related but separate areas, okay? And the idea here is we're going to be moving towards thinking about the competencies. So what do we want our students to know at each grade level? And then we want to figure out what are the activities, the college career advising lessons we're going to use, and then what's the student experience? What are we hoping they're going to be getting out of it, and what will go into their portfolio? So that's going to be the theme throughout each of these. You will have a unit, a career development unit that will have multiple lessons. We would like one lesson to be a classroom activity because that's where the caring and encouraging adult really comes in. They're able to shine when they're able to talk, have the peers talk, they talk about themselves around the activities. Then there's an online activity that follows that. So the online activity is what we're starting to show you when I do the demonstrations, different things we can do. And then some kind of a culminating activity. Could be a classroom activity, could be a small group, where we're kind of tying it together. Now, you may have multiple lessons across those 3, but if we think of it as some kind of a classroom experience, an online, and a culminating, and then the 4th piece is the artifact. What are we going to put into the portfolio? So what we're going to be modeling as we go along right now is that whole process. We're going to start by looking at classroom activities. You got a big book in front of you. That's for your school counselor. It's online. It's not meant for you to be doing everything from that hard copy. We just wanted you to see it, and in an activity like this, it's easy to kind of peruse it. So please bring it back to each workshop. But it's online, and the reason it's online is because everything you need for classroom lessons are in there, and it was designed and developed based on some significant funding from the Department of Education. So we really like that it's there. We have access to other lessons too, but we wanted to give you something that we felt was research-based. Then we're going to be looking at the online lessons, and then we'll just kind of walk through it with each one. So we're starting now with social emotional learning. And what you're going to do in this first piece here is you're going to just talk very quickly, okay, about how you're engaging in social emotional learning currently in your schools. This is the CASEL model. Okay, this is the national model that's used internationally everywhere. People use it. It's good. We can talk about things that may not be in it, but the point is it's a good framework. And out of that, we put some descriptions based on actually Singapore. It's in your workbook on 21, page 21, 22 in that area. We put some things that are in there that we thought were like more concrete examples, operational things. What we want you to do in just a very quick few minutes is share out how you think you're already engaging in social emotional learning as you think of these. What are the ones you're nailing right now? And I'm going to put a timer on. So we've got, let's say, 3 minutes. Relationships, okay?
It's interesting. We have a school that has a lot of great structures in place to support students in this way. We have a strong student support team that meets weekly to talk about individual students and connecting them to the different resources in the building that they might need academically or emotionally. We have crews or advisories that are DBT-based crews to directly speak to some of these needs.
So which ones do you think you're nailing the best at this point?
Well, my thing is, I think we're nailing systems and operations, but I don't think we're nailing teacher relationships one-on-one in, you're in front of me and we're just having a civil conversation.
Good point. And the other piece, so that makes sense, So we've got a structure set up, but it's not necessarily functioning in the way that we're talking about. And I'll use that a lot. A lot of times we have to get a structure set up first. We got to get a common identity, common belief that this is valuable and we need to do it. Then it's the quality and the type of functions. The reason why those descriptions are so important is we want to measure that our students are developing these key characteristics. And that's really important because those are the characteristics that predict whether or not they're ready to be that proactive, engaged individual. And it helps us as a community to be accountable for the specific skills they need. These are employability skills. So we're able to communicate out to our employers and our parents and everyone else what we're doing if we can start thinking down to that more concrete area. So the domain and then the specific indicators. And we'll talk later in implementation how we might go about measuring it. But the idea is exactly you said. Sometimes we've got the philosophy, we've got a general belief about it, but what functions are we making to really nail these things down? One other comment, and then we're going to move right into that next activity. There is one out there, I know it. Yes?
We do restorative justice during
Awesome.
advisory, so I think social awareness needs work.
Beautiful. Restorative justice is awesome, and it does. It kicks on social awareness. I think restorative justice can also start talking about self-management as well, because it starts thinking about how I'm going forward in my life as well. So there's a lot of elements, and what we'll find is our activities actually cut across multiple areas. We can do one activity that cuts across, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that at the end of the social emotional learning. After we've done a number of activities, what are the domains we've been hitting as we've talked about it? You have in front of you a Who Am I activity. Kind of cool looking. This is from that huge monster book, and we made a copy of this particular one to show you what a classroom curriculum should look like. Based on meta-analyses done on social emotional learning, they came up with the idea that really good curriculum that's out there should be sequenced. It should engage active learning. That's why it's a classroom. We want it to be a group activity. Specific skills, and that was where we were just getting to. We have to get down to the concrete skills within that social emotional learning. And we also have to be able to identify what are they learning. We can do an excellent SEL curriculum and the student said, no, I thought that was something else. So are they aware that they're learning these skills and the value of these skills, okay? So I want you in your group to take a look at this Who Am I activity, and I want you to talk about what you see in it, what you like about it. This is the first part, the first type of classroom activity. It's around the self-exploration skills that we're talking about. So go ahead and take a look at it, and then we'll give yourself 5 minutes, I think, and then we're going to do some more online work.
What's nice about this is one-on-one we get to know kids, and what they present to the world is not what we get to know.
Yeah.
So this gives them an opportunity to kind of be like, you're not just, how you act. Like, that's not all that you are.
Yeah.
And it's kind of simple and easy.
And fun. It's fun, easy, and so the point being that sometimes we do a lot of this stuff one-on-one. This activity is showing that, wow, when we do it in a group, there's a lot of power we gain, right? Because you as an educator, you're getting peers working with peers, and it's a deeper level of awareness for this particular activity. But it's also about, at the end, we can be asking them to write a little thing. What did you learn about yourself? The employer is coming to interview you. What are you going to say? Right? That we're trying to get them to take on an understanding that they're more than just a child sitting in a class or on the playground. There's something happening, and they're learning that each of them have unique qualities, which is really interesting, right? And it's also funny how well our peers can read us better than we can, right? And so the insights we gain by hearing how others reflect, it's very powerful, very positive. Talk about school climate. We kind of just nailed that, didn't we? We're creating a community right in the school. You had a point?
This kind of resonated with me. Just it seems like a lot of ownership.
Yes.
On the student side.
Yes.
I think we talk a lot.
So student ownership.
Yeah,
I'm just quoting so they can all
who
hear.
I am, what are my traits and stuff, and I just really like the questions about, what are the pros and cons of this particular trait, getting students to understand that when I act a certain way, if I curse a teacher out, what does that do to the relationship?
That's
And
right.
what do I need to do to get help from whoever to help with
That's right. What you're doing is you're saying these are the skills. I'll call them skills rather than traits. These are the skills, because skills are malleable, right? We can change that. Here's the skills I have. Here's the pros and cons. And as I look down the road, what's the meaningfulness and relevance? That's really important, because it's not just about what I'm doing right here. It's about recognizing I'm building my character. The other thing that's happening is you said student ownership, and that's what I mean by student-driven. Because what happens when they realize they have a career and life goal, but they've got some mental health challenges? Now they have a reason to address those, and I've heard it. We've been doing this with, you talk a lot about restorative justice. This work is being applied with youth that are coming out of prison. And in 1 year's time, these youth that have gone through so much trauma, in 1 year's time, they're graduating from high school, they're in a job, they're in post-secondary, they're getting credentials, all 4. In 1 year. How does a child go from, my life is totally out of control? Because once they get those goals, and we heard this one girl say, yeah, it was time for me to deal with my mental health issues. And she was in jail because of all the fighting. And she knew she needed medication, she needed therapy, but all she did, she just smiled. She goes, yeah, it was time. But it was because she had something to live for, right? And so once I find out, and the other thing that happened in that with another young woman was, she never knew she had talent. She never knew she had character. So this whole idea of helping them see that they have something that's unique, that's about them and has positive attributes, very powerful and life-changing for our youth. But yes, so great. All right. So REASEC counselors, we may have to explain this in some detail for our administrators. This is kind of the REASEC, we don't call them personality traits, it's a personality type, because again, it's malleable and changeable. And the idea is that each of us have a particular type, a preference for how we deal with the world. Anyone, school counselors, what is your REASEC type? And then we'll explain what it is, but just to get to it. Social, because we like being with people. That's how they started. I don't know if that's still the same, but they started out social. Okay, what else? Enterprising, you gotta sell ideas. You gotta help youth see that, yeah, we can do this, this is great. And you gotta sell to your teachers too, because you gotta get in the classrooms. What else? What was that? Artistic? Absolutely. SAE is really big. Investigative can help because it's that research-based practice. So looking for science, looking for how do we make things work. That can be, so the A, the I, and also sometimes the C, putting in policies, putting together programs is going to be a little bit of conventional in there as well. So anyway, so we have these 6 domains. So the realistic people are those that like working outdoors. They like working with machinery. They like working with instruments. So when you're in a hospital setting and you want to be a radiologist, that's probably somebody with an R profile because they like working on the instruments. Okay? If they're investigative, they're the scientists, they're the researchers. That's a lot of your faculty like myself. We're interested in studying. I mean, who knew that really the reason I'm up here is I'm studying how we change systems. And the more I learn through teaching and working with you, then the insights you give me, the more I can go back into my research and say, hey, we missed something. And it's through the dialogue. So I'm always thinking in my head about the problems we're trying to solve here. Artistic, right, is the whole idea of not just being creative because I like music or I do art. It's that I want self-expression. I want to create it. And that's why the A is really exciting in school counseling, because we're doing fun things and we got to create new programs and new ideas. That's a creative aspect. And it becomes a signature. It becomes a part of me. The social, of course, we know, being with people. It helps if you're in a school. It's helpful to have an S in your profile because you're going to be around a lot of people. Enterprising, the whole idea of selling, persuading, influencing. Certainly our elected officials have strong E's, car salespeople. But you know, when we're working and trying to help youth really get behind this or helping others, having a little enterprising is important. We're going to compensate for the lack of enterprising in this room by calling it communication materials. And we're going to try to help design communication materials that will be that persuasive process. And we're going to use posters like you just saw and other things to help you do that, because it's not necessarily something that comes naturally to all of us, and we understand that. And then the conventional is really about that business quality, coming up with project management systems, coming up with the policies that we're going to use to make sure we're all following. How are we going to know we're doing this with quality? How are we going to know that everyone's implementing with fidelity? How are we going to know that every youth is getting access to that caring, encouraging adult? We need our conventional types to help us map out a plan and a strategy for making sure that happens, okay? So all of these elements are really important. What I want to do is, the reason we're saying this is that this is an important piece. We don't have to do this through interest assessment. The interest assessments provide the reset code, but they don't tell the students. They instead generate occupations. So let me just give a quick speech, just a little one. The challenge we have with interest assessments is that we're moving away from self-exploration and we're pointing them to the careers. And the answer is everyone's a florist, it turns out. Florist comes up on every profile. Starting career development with a 180-item interest profiler kills any interest in career development for most of our youth. And if you don't think that, ask them, what do you think of career? Oh, I took that. And they got a couple of swears if they're, in certain cases, or at least under their breath. Not fun. And they didn't learn anything. They didn't learn about themselves. The reason we want to start this process, and we talked about ownership and the sense of character development, is we want them to identify for themselves. That's called power. We want them to define for themselves what they're about and who they are. And so we want to find activities that do not start with interest assessments necessarily, but are starting with other exploration activities that help them discover. The other problem we have, and this is now more the researchy part of it, is that our youth of color, our low-income youth, they've already given up on a ton of careers. Not even part of their consciousness, not even in their unconscious. It's a natural process. We've got theories and research showing how it works. But we know that unless they get an encouraging adult and a discovery process that's designed, they won't even begin to bring some of those ideas back. They may have all that engineering talent, but they're not going to look at engineering naturally. It's not just going to happen. So what we need to do is be thinking about how we help them discover the fact that they have this talent and how that talent can be applied. Does that seem okay? So I'm going to show you some quick ways we can do that and influence the idea of influence thinking of other ways, certainly, that we can do it as well. I'm going to do this in the Math CS. I know some of you are using Naviance. I am going to slow down so that if you're trying to do it in Naviance, this was the feedback I got already, slow down so you can try to see how it might work. It might be complicated. You have time, of course, after this workshop to kind of go back through that. But I'll walk through this, and those of you who are following me on the CIS, I will also slow down to make sure you're able to keep up with what you're going. You will need to re-log in because you'll have been pushed out of the system because it times you out. So if you want to start logging into that system, we can start looking at that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to look up computer support specialist. I think it's actually computer user support specialist. We're going to look at that career area. And the reason we're going to look at it is because we're going to look for the skills and talent in this first example to see how we can actually, in a few minutes, help students realize that they have some skills and talents if they're interested in something like this, and all of the other different ways they can think of themselves in the world of work. So the idea is if we can take an idea of the skills, like we talked about, I think I talked about the Minecraft. Well, Minecraft has about 8 or 9 key skills that they're learning. And when you put those skills into the right system, you come up with about 100 high-paying, high-demand careers. Yeah, who knew? Unbelievable. What happens then when I talk with them about their Minecraft and have them explore to find the skills and then them to discover the various careers? It opens up their sense of possibility. And with an encouraging adult saying, wow, that makes total sense now that, knowing you, this is something you can look at, it gets them engaged. We can do that very easily and quickly with them engaged in it without having to rely on the traditional interest assessment. So here we go, I'm coming in. Is everybody kind of catching up here? Okay, it's really slow. Well, when you do start to catch up, we're going to go to assessments, okay? And under assessments, we're going to look at skills. I'm going to go slower. Okay. I'm going to press on skills. Did you get there? Assessments and then skills. It's also in your workbook on your in your participant guide. We have these slides all in there as well. What's interesting about this this particular one, it's based out of ONET, which is the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics system. And all they've done in this system is taken the feature that's there and make it look nice and do some fun things with it. But you can do this within other systems as well. So I'm selecting an occupation under that skills piece. And what do we say we're doing? Computer user support specialist. Where did you go? There we are. Okay, I'm going to click on this. It says, do you really want to go there? Okay, so now what's happened? All right, so I'm sitting down with a student who says, I hate school, I hate life. Have you ever had one of those? One of my favorites was the student who walked in, the assistant principal. I was in Milwaukee working closely with the schools there. And the student goes, how many times do I have to get suspended before you finally kick me out of this school? It was awesome. I just loved it. Had a nice conversation with them. But anyway, so the point of it is we got students that for attention, frustration, whatever, right? So I just look at them and say, so what are you thinking about? Give me something. And it doesn't matter what it is because I plug it right in here. Once I did, look at this. Really, here's a bunch of skills. Okay, here's a whole bunch of skills. Let's talk about these. So all of a sudden I went from resistance to, oh, really? That didn't take long. That was in seconds. I've got their attention. But I got even more things I can do with this. I think of this like a magic act. So we're looking at all these really cool things that's saying, all right, so these are skills. Do these things relate to you in some way? I mean, they may not all, but that's okay. These are the skills you would need to get. But then I've got this thing down here called Get My Results. And the reason I'm getting my results is because more important than what they just gave me, I can point them to 30 other careers that align with those skills. And now I've captured their imagination. Okay? All of a sudden, it's they're driving the process. They gave me something. It may not have been very thoughtful, but now they can go back and do it themselves. So we want to build their skills in thinking about how to do this. And we're showing them that the world connects to them. This world of work is meaningful now because you gave me something and I'm helping you see that there's some things we can look at. Now these are organized by the 16 career clusters. So this is our career and tech ed people in the room. Yeah, thank goodness. Because by organizing these gazillion number of occupations into 16 career clusters, it's a great starting point. Because within those clusters, if they really like things in agriculture, some of our families coming in from farming and things like that, we can focus in those areas and find a whole range of careers that align to that. It's a nice way of organizing the world, okay? And then there's pathways and all. So this is really cool, I think. The answer is yes, it is really cool, if you're here on that. That what we're trying to do that is to help expand, whereas our career interest inventories are designed to narrow. See, the traditional model that our school counselors that you've all been trained in is that we're trying to do career choice and decision making. Not anymore. We're focusing on positive youth development. That when youth start to gain a sense of their capacity and have a sense of purpose, they start acting in the world in positive ways. We've heard restorative justice. We're hearing about increasing grades. In Colorado, I'm hearing about reductions in teenage pregnancy rates. I'm hearing in schools that have always been at the bottom of the scale for graduation rates, they're now at the top in their state. And these are in rural areas. These are on reservations. These are in places that nothing has ever changed. But once they started doing this process, the youth stood up and started taking advantage of opportunities. We had this rural place where the only thing they had in town was a stoplight and a gas station. And everyone was moving out because there was no hope for any future. They put this in place, and all of a sudden the students that were going and completing college increased so much, people started moving back in. This was the place to be. But yet 5 years before that, this was not the place to be. This was the dead end, okay? So powerful stuff when we start engaging youth in driving and seeing their possibilities, and it starts, and we don't move yet from that self-exploration area, okay? And here's the online way in which we can get at this. And as teachers, we don't have to know the answers to all this. And nor does any school counselor know every career and everything about it. All we need to know is how to get engaged in the system and let the students go, and then be with them. And that's the facilitating function, okay? So we can do that. Questions or thoughts on that? Oh, by the way, we can also look at our Holland type. We're gonna go to MIFA pathway after the break, and it's gonna be a little bit different, the RIASEC type. But this is a way that they've weighted it. So they've weighted, so in other words, I didn't have to do the interest assessment, but I could still look at my personality type. It says investigative, social, conventional. So individuals that are involved in computers, there's a science component to that. So investigative helps. It's a user specialist. I'm helping you learn how to use computers. We would like them to have some social skills. Am I right? Be helpful. And then conventional. Ever called up when your computer goes wrong, and what's the first thing they do? They go to some plan and say, okay, first thing I need you to do is click here and see if this happens. They have a very set policy and project management about how they're going to support you on that particular piece. What we're going to find, interestingly, there's an error in their particular piece that we'll find, which is that the R also comes up big. They don't have it for some reason. They messed up on this one. I have told them about it. But the R comes up. It's really 4 types. It's realistic because I like working on machines. I like working on things. And it's social, investigative, and conventional. It's that combination of all 4 makes that computer user specialist, which makes sense. Okay, we just talked about a bunch of stuff. What are the areas of the social emotional learning as you look at that framework? What have we covered in these 2 lessons? We went and did this classroom activity with the Who Am I? We then went online and started looking at the different world of work from their perspective and seeing where their talent might lie and helping expand out. What are some of the things that you see that from the different SEL characteristics? What are the things that we've been addressing here? Yes. Oh yeah. So we're gonna talk to each other. So why don't we do this? Why don't you turn around and have 2 questions that you're going to ask. One is the SEL, and the second is, what artifacts might you bring out of all of what we just talked about that might go in that e-portfolio? So we'd like you to actually turn around one group. Don't all turn around, because then you're all going to face the wrong way. You know how to do this. So turn around and talk with other teams, because we want you to get to know each other as well. Okay. So what I want to do, just to kind of close out the personal social part, is I want to talk with you about what you see, what did you come up with around the social emotional learning domains that you're learning, but I also want to talk about what artifacts you might consider putting into the e-portfolio based on this, okay? Because that's what we want to, we're modeling through how we want to go about designing our college, and career advising program. So first starting with the SEL, what were some of the domains you felt we were addressing when we worked on the Who Am I, and then also when we did the reassess kind of evaluation and then looking at careers and such, and looking at the different skill sets and focusing on the person's talent and how that talent applies to the world of work. What are some of the SEL pieces we have there? So when we think about self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship management, responsible decision-making, what are some of the ones that we're doing through those few activities? Any thoughts?
Well, self-awareness.
Self-awareness would be one of the big ones, right? So that would be one. What else? You brought some of these things up, responsible decision-making. You brought up in the Who Am I some activities, some things that were happening that seemed to go across some of these as well. The minute we start talking about restorative justice issues, right? We start talking about relationship management. Also becoming aware of how other people are different from me, how I'm connected. Social awareness, perspective taking, which comes into those activities. Self-management can also come into this. So what we're trying to say is that when we think about doing personal social development, it's not as though we're coming up with 10 activities and that any given activity is going to address only one area. Actually, whatever activity we're doing is probably addressing multiple. We have to articulate that, though, because we need our teachers to understand that, and we need our students and families to understand what our program is trying to do. So for this unit, here are the 5 SEL areas that we're focusing on. We want to make that articulated, okay? And that's just important, because if the students didn't know they learned it, it's not really going to be helpful when they have to explain what they've learned, right? And that's the part that we really want. We want them to know who they are. We want them to be aware of the skills that they've been developing. The next question on this was artifacts. What are some artifacts that you feel would be really nice to put into a portfolio that we could based on these activities? Perfect. And when you say research paper, is it on themselves, or is it a research? But what's the topic on, though? Does it connect with self? So one of the ways you could take that is they could be exploring a career. They could take a historical figure, and they can use the system to learn what was the skills they had, what was the career that they were in, and what can they tell us about that career. So yeah, that's a great way of helping them kind of use that to really explore what they're about. What are some other ideas for artifacts? Yes?
I just think it would be interesting to have them include the skill set that they circled.
Yep.
And then revisit that again at the end of junior year.
Absolutely.
You know, basically what's changed, what's the same.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of the e-portfolio. So they can place something into a document. You can do some kind of documentation. It could be the skills, what they've got. It could be a picture, a PDF. You could also have them write out a paragraph. Tell us about your talent. Tell us about your skills. What have you learned about yourself? And have them articulated in writing. They could also do it in a public speaking. They could write it and then talk about it in class. Here's what I've learned. Like my elevator speech when I go to get interviewed. These are artifacts that they can have. They can write it out and then talk about it. And then they can put that in the portfolio, and then absolutely coming back in the junior year and reflecting to see how I've changed and how I've developed. Absolutely. Okay. So we want to keep thinking through and being creative on that. The reason we're having you turn around and talk to other people, because one, you're social, so we got that part. But also because we want this to become a community of practice. So we have you in a Google Classroom on the Southeast, right, group? Because you're going to be putting your stuff up, and we want you to share it with each other. We want you to see what other people are doing. So there's nothing you have to do here that reinvents anything. Yes? You can't get in? Their code didn't work. Yeah, I got you. I got it covered. That's why I brought it up. I'm ready with that question. I was not ready this morning, but I'm ready now. So my understanding is that if you're trying to go into the Google Classroom with your school, through your school stuff, it's not going to work. You have to go in with your Gmail, with a Gmail, you have to log in with your Gmail email address, not with the school. So that's the challenge, okay? I don't understand, I'm counseling psychology, not technology, so let's keep that clear. So I'm quoting the answer, but that doesn't mean I understand it. But I can look like I understand it. That's what good counselors are able to do, right? Okay, but that's my understanding, is you have to go in with a Gmail account to open that up. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about career development education. So remember, personal social education was one domain. The next domain area that we want to focus on is career development education, and we have 3 areas: career awareness, career exploration, career immersion. These are going to be fun activities, but what we also have within that is a connection to the world of work. And we want to be thinking as we do this a 4th component. So we have a classroom component, we have an online component, we have some kind of a 3rd component where we're culminating activity, and now a 4th component is how can we connect them to the world of work? Are there employers that we can talk with? Are there experiences that we can go on a tour? Can we bring some in? Can we watch interviews? What are the ways we can connect them to employers as well as people in the world of work to help make some meaning out of that? So we want to add that into our thoughts as we're designing our college career advising program. What we're going to start with, just checking my notes here. What we want to start with is this little activity called Old Jobs Die, New Jobs Are Born. It's the second one of these little handouts that you have. And we want you to take about 5 minutes to look through that and think through how you might modify this lesson to work within your current school context. And the reason we're asking for that is we're not taking all of this and just simply using it. We've got to find ways to tailor and modify the curriculum and the activities to address our particular school needs, your particular populations, what it is we're trying to achieve. So as you look through this, spend a few minutes talking through whether this works for you and maybe what tweaks you might want to make, and then we'll do a quick report out.
In our school, we have a course called Foundations of Leadership.
Great.
And I think that this has a really good basis for doing now for many days of making sure we play videos or expose the kids to different jobs that they may not have known.
May not have thought about. That's right. Yeah, the whole Dirty Jobs, television show, which is awesome as well, and being able to incorporate some of those pieces that goes on. It's great, and it helps us to see that. When you think about what it takes to make a community work, we have to appreciate all of the work that's going on, not just assuming that there's the high and low. So, excellent points. So we're going to move now into kind of an online way of looking at some of these things. And what we want to do now is we want to discover the nature of some of these as we become aware. What is this career about? What more can we learn? And this is where the online systems are necessary. Because in the online systems, there's so much information available that no individual has available to them. You can't memorize all this stuff. So I have my daughter's profile up here because I had to. With MIFA Pathways, you're able to go in and create your own stuff, so I just put my daughter in. She doesn't know that. I think she knows. I think I've told her, yes. She'll get in one day and say, what is all of this? So we want to do some Discover Careers. We're going to do a career search that's going to be based on the occupation because we've already located an occupation. And we had computer. Yes, I know it's right there, but the last time it would not let me just submit it directly. Support specialist, and I'm going to hit submit, and then I'm going to click on it. It's warming up in here? Yes? Okay. You're thawing out? We'll need a mop to get the ice off the floor? Okay. So computer support user support specialist. So this is kind of nice. It's a very nice graphically appealing way of kind of locating the information and helping us look at it, which is what online systems are about. Naviance 2 has its own beauty and graphic style, which is great. What we're learning here is that we can get to this particular degree through a vocational training or 2-year degree, which is nice. And again, think of these as on-ramps. So we can actually go out and find these different opportunities that I can do right now within even in high school. I can start practicing and getting some of these skill sets, and that becomes my on-ramp into computer science or into other technical career areas. Gives us a pretty good idea that there's some money available for that. Now, one of the interesting things is our youth do not resonate much to annual wages. What do they want to see? Hourly, yeah. So most of the systems will give you that hourly wage because that's what they want to see. Now, if you do a budget exercise as part of, which is really fun to do, right? Because you have them put in how many of their iced coffees from, we call it Dunkin's now, right? or Starbucks or wherever they're getting, and they start adding that up, and they start adding all their pieces up, what they want to do, and they realize, oh my gosh, I can't afford my life. So at that point, they get something that says, here's your annual amount you would need to survive. So they could use that as a benchmark, if they wanted to think about that. But for the most part, they know hourly. That has the meaning, and so you want to make sure that we get the data down to that level. But this is kind of nice. We get the tasks, we get the work activities, we have other careers, we have the personal qualifications, and then as I mentioned before, the reassert code comes out a little bit differently for this particular system, and this is more accurate to the ONET, which is that this person is someone who likes working with technology, machines, so that's realistic, they're investigative, conventional. What's missing in this one, but is correct from the federal government, is social is right in there too, so it's really a 4-package piece. But just another way of taking a look at it, okay? So this is exploration, awareness. Awareness now, we'll move to exploration next, but this is an awareness activity to start seeing that when we think about careers, we have to think about a lot of information. We have to take a lot into account. And they're starting to get an understanding of what things are about, that I need to understand the post-secondary pathways. I need to understand the courses that I need to take in school. I need to think a little bit about labor market information, and we'll look through that in the next round as we keep going. Questions on that? So MIFA Pathway is, again, also free, and it's coming along. They're continuing to build on features, but it's got a nice look to it, nice and clean. So when we think about career awareness, we just did a couple of fun little things. What kind of culminating or what kind of product could we put together that could go, an artifact that could go into their e-portfolio? Any ideas? So we went and looked at some of these jobs that were kind of out there. Yeah.
Maybe digital badges?
Yes. Yeah. What kind of a digital badge are you thinking in terms of put some a little more detail?
Some sort of competency that they've demonstrated mastery of or working towards mastery of, in maybe a computer programming language or fundamentals thereof.
Yeah, so part of the career awareness could be, I'm thinking we could do badges in 2 ways. So one is yes, we could be thinking, especially as a career pathway, if we've got that, what are the specializations that they might need? And they could design their own kind of badge. What competencies would they need to develop through this process to basically say that they've got some understanding of these pieces? You could also do badges around the career awareness skills. Because remember, we're not wanting to think of this just as an activity. We're building their self-navigation skills. So you could take the personal skills, the career awareness, career exploration, career planning, and all the different planning things, or immersion, and then the career planning areas. You could almost make each one of those a badge, where once they demonstrate certain skills through writing about it, what have you learned, how do you do this, take it home and do this with your parents and have them go through it and show that you can teach it, right? Doing all of that, boom, you've got a badge. Because that would demonstrate their competency in learning how to navigate this career exploration process. Very exciting on that way. So that was kind of how I took your badge. A little different direction you were describing, but I kind of like it. It's a great idea. Other artifacts? Writing about a career they're interested in, writing about a career they're not interested in. Can be interesting. Career awareness, just keep expanding. What are the different things they're learning about? What should they know about as they start to explore careers? What's the kind of information they want to know about that's going to help them think through more deeply what's happening? So it's sort of just the awareness of what's out there, getting a sense of the clusters and such, and then we move into more deeper career exploration. Now what we're focusing on is helping them establish career and life goals. Not a career choice and decision, but starting to think about where they want to locate themselves in the world. It could be a place. It could be a general set of activities. That's okay. It could be within a particular career cluster. I really like this aeronautics field. So instead of getting them to focus down to the actual occupation, we want to focus on the area. And we want them to look at the skills that transfer across areas. A lot of us are in career and technical education programs, and we have career pathways. Awesome. What are the transferable skills they're learning within those pathways? So yes, I'm in graphic design. What can I do with those skills? They go everywhere. There's so many things we can do with that. We have a lot that are doing in healthcare. Very important. We'll see that in just a moment. Very important area. Lots we can do with skills that we're doing in healthcare, okay, that can transfer all over. And we want to expand that sense. So with career exploration, we're really trying to help them realize that as they're learning, what they're learning is something that's going to prepare them for multiple opportunities. And then we want them to kind of start putting together 3 goals. 3, not 1. What's the first goal they're going to tell us when you say, what are you thinking about for your future? What's the first goal we're going to hear from your students? What's that? Maybe college. What else are they going to say? Money. I want money. They're going to say what? I want to be a millionaire, but I also want to be an athlete. Right? I want to be a professional athlete. Yeah, I'm going to be a professional athlete. I know, but you're 5'4", and I haven't seen one in the NBA in a while. I'm not saying you won't. What we want to do is never say that. What we want to say is, great, give me 2 others. Okay? We never want to use the R word, and here's why. If that student may not have, they haven't even played basketball or they aren't on the team yet, now that's fine. They'll get that feedback as they explore, as they discover on their own. It's not my job, it's to facilitate and help them learn about what's there. But can I tell you something else that's interesting? In the NBA, who knew? The occupation that has athletes part of it, that's the smallest occupation inside the NBA. The NBA has lots of opportunities for jobs. So when I hear someone say, I like basketball, I hear them saying, yeah, let's learn about the world of work in basketball. Let's go visit. Let's go see all of the things people are doing in that environment. Because if that's going to capture your imagination, then let's start with that. Okay? And if there's students with disabilities and they're saying, and they have significant cognitive disabilities and they want to be a medical doctor, awesome, because you know what I hear? The medical field. And let's go learn about that. And let's see all of the things that we can do within that field. That's for them self-determination and power, to be able to say in the world, where do I want to locate myself and who do I want to be with? That's very, very important for us to honor. So so we throw out the R word. We're never talking about what's realistic. We're starting with where you're at and we're asking you to add 2 more. So there's always 3. Yes?
What's the R word?
Realistic. Being realistic. You hear people do it all the time. I know these kids want to go to college, but let's be realistic.
Preach.
What? Oh, they preach that? Oh. Yeah, we don't want that. We want to honor and we want to value and we want to encourage. And through the self-discovery, they will start to see how this works. And we've got them engaged, and that's the proactive quality to it. So always 3. I've got lots of research behind that. It's important to just know. Stay with 3. Sorry, not there yet. Labor market. We're going to talk about labor market now, too. We want them to look around them and see what's available. And your state just finished an evaluation where they had all 7 regions working with the workforce development boards to come up with their labor projections. And they just finished it this past spring. And what we're asking you to do is consider, when you're designing your college and career advising lessons, look at your area. You have an online reference here too, so you'll be able, with the online PowerPoint, you'll be able to click right to it. You'll be able to go in and say, hey, look at what's going on in our area. This is what we should be looking at. Just as a reference, not as we're not going to get all 55 of our students into the healthcare pathway, but we want to explore the healthcare pathway because it's in our backyard. And guess what? The employers in your backyard are going to be interested in talking with you too because they're interested in finding great people. So it becomes an opportunity for a nice dialogue. And again, we focus on transferable skills. So as they learn about those career pathways and opportunities, what we're really building is their capacity to think about themselves in a broader way. Questions? If you look at Central, we've got transportation in there, warehousing, logistics. Yeah, that's not quite there, is it? Construction does show up under Central. So that would be the broader category. What you would do then is, and they did talk about some of that stuff. They talked about those when I looked through them in more detail. So what I've given you is their kind of broad categories. When you go into the reports, they're going to break it down into some of the subtopics. So I think Central may be the only one that really addressed that issue around that. So it may be that would be a place to look at. But you're right, they weren't necessarily focused on that. They were focusing on, and I don't know all of the details of their focus, but this is what they came up with. And all we're saying is it's a starting point. These are not marching orders in any way. It's just to say, hey, here's some things going on, and then certainly you see the world around you, and we want the students to see the world around them and identify what careers are coming up that they might want to look at as well. Absolutely. When you go back into the Mass CIS or Naviance, one of the powerful things they have in there is the ability to go in deep on the occupations and really look and compare across occupations. So they can put side by side two occupations and compare them. How much education? What are the job characteristics? What am I doing? And we can use that as an opportunity for them to write a paper about what they've learned. What have you compared? Right? You've got 3 goals. Make one of those goals, by the way, STEM. Some kind of STEM career. Have them look at themselves because they haven't necessarily realized that all those games they're playing relate to STEM careers. And we want to push them and help them see and encourage them that actually they've got a lot of the requisite talent to start thinking in that direction. They may have to focus more on math and science, but that's exactly what happened to that young woman who I said got the dietary aid. She was in a career pathway class on biotechnical stuff in healthcare, and she got so excited about hospitals. And since she had these skills, she was able to go in the system and say, what can I do in a hospital? And she found the dietary aid. Then she goes, great, what do I need to do to continue? Well, I got to go back and take math and science. She was at the bottom of her class. This wasn't a student that was showing anything. She came back into her junior year and started taking the advanced math and science classes, took 10 credits of early college, graduated, and had a full scholarship to a nursing program. That's what we're talking about, okay? So we're talking about this idea that they're learning what's happening, they're seeing it, they're making meaning out of it, and they're acting on it. And this is also why I like the idea of the badges and the skill set, because once they have those skills, once they're inspired, and we don't know what's going to inspire them. It could be a TV show. I know, those TV shows with all the CIS shows, where they got the cool lighting and, ooh, I want to work there. Well, they need to explore a little bit, all right? And we want them to do that deep exploration so they know what's there. But they'll come to it, and when they do, they will stand up and start moving very quickly to get this stuff going. We want to start thinking about connecting them to the world of work. So we've already talked about videos that can connect them so they can see what's going on in a video type platform. But we can also start finding out who in the world, who are the businesses that might be willing to talk with our youth, who might be able to come in and have intimate conversation, not just let me give a lecture, but how do we help the youth know something about that occupation, that business, so when that individual comes in, they're asking meaningful questions. We're being ambassadors, these students. We have a lot of employers, I don't know if you know this, we have a lot of employers who are afraid of our youth. How do we help them get over that? They got to meet them. They've got to realize there's talent here. So what we're creating is an opportunity for them to actually have real conversations and say, wow, I was concerned, but now that I've met you and I see what you want to do, I want to have you, come in. I was just talking with someone at break about how students look when they're in the world of work doing their immersive activities versus what they look like in the classroom. It's like, wow, if I could have that person in my classroom, because they're professional, they're doing the right stuff and all of that. It's great to have them experience that with another professional and have the employers see our youth with great potential and that they need to invest in our youth. I have a person, head of an industry called Pace Industries. They have places up in Lowell. And the CEO says, it's not about my wanting to get involved with youth to help them all come to Pace Industries. I'd love that, but that's not what it's about. It's about giving youth a better shot. It's about giving them better opportunities. And we as employers need to be starting to connect with you in schools to start showing you that there are great possibilities here and making it happen. There are employers who do get it, but we're going to have to nurture them along. So I put a few things down. If you're going to have your career fair, how many have done career fairs? Okay, all right. I can almost say in my head what those career fairs were like. I want to tell you about what I saw in Singapore as a career fair. The students walked in, and every company had to bring their equipment, the things they do. And so the career fair was about them playing and engaging and seeing that they had the EMT skills. Wow, you're really good at that. And we're engaging and talking and having fun with it. Make it more than just a sitting at a table. Make it interactive and have them bring their equipment in. And that's the same thing with tours, not just touring, doing. Yes?
We actually had a general contractor come into our school last year, and they erected a little house in one of our basement classrooms.
Exactly.
And he had like an electrician and a plumber
Awesome.
and a bunch of people that he works with, and they came in and showed the kids how to wire a house and
Outstanding.
kind of put a roof on and everything.
Outstanding.
That was pretty cool.
Outstanding. So putting my investigative hat on, when you have girls in that situation learning that they can build a house, that is the realistic part of the RIASET code that helps them see themselves as engineers. And without the confidence, they're not going to see it. So they have the ability, but they never realize they really could do it. And we've seen great interventions where that's the focus, is helping them get to that. And with all our youth, the same thing. But these are really great opportunities. So those kinds of things are what we're talking about. More of almost creating a mini immersive experience, a project learning experience within the school, or as we go out to them, that's much more engaging and in-depth. That's what we mean by career exploration.
So what we're doing this year in December is we're having instead of a college and career fair, we're doing a careers and alternative pathways fair.
Okay. Cool. Career Alternative Pathways Fair. So not just focusing on the college, but let's focus on what the world is about. Well, what we want to do is we want to get them excited about a goal, and then the post-secondary is now aligned to support them in reaching that goal. The academic courses they're taking in school are now relevant because they see it as the entry requirements to be able to enter in through that. So what happens, and nationally what we found was, we really want to reframe, it's not college and career readiness, it's that career readiness drives college readiness. Because once they have those goals in mind, everything else starts to come into motion, and they're driving it and they're shaping it. And then we're doing a great job by creating opportunities and helping them, support them in that way, because they still need us. They need help in getting connections. They need that social capital. They need that kind of, and as well as intellectual capital to really get through there. So any ideas on some portfolio things we might do on something like this?
Maybe a video of them practicing interviewing.
Awesome. Yeah. Being able to talk about who they are and what they're about would be great.
Or their elevator speech.
Their elevator speech would be great. Yep. One of the most powerful things that you can do as a school is called a student-led parent-teacher conference, where the student takes all of that information you just said, who am I, what am I about, what are my goals, what am I thinking about going, and they communicate that with their parents and their advisor, the one who's doing the college career advising, and they have that conversation. The parent participation rate usually starts out at 85%, but by year 2 it's 100%. And the parents come away from that saying that you are the greatest school in the history of the world. Almost, but they do. And they realize, oh my gosh, this is we've had parents that come in to a school like that and they go, you know what I love about the school? The first thing they asked me when I walked in, what are you going to do to help us prepare your child for life? And it's like, we're not here to teach them for tests, we're here to launch adults. And that vision, that sense that the school is here working for and with us to help prepare our child for their future takes all the conversation away from the test scores and everything else, because they can see and feel what's happening. Very powerful. Now, by having a whole school implementation, you can do this. You cannot do this if it's a school counseling-led process, because the school counselor can't get to know each of those students, and they don't have the time in their day, nor is any union going to allow them to have a 1-hour conversation or half-hour conversation with every parent in the school every year. But when you have it broken down to a 15-to-1 ratio, all of a sudden it becomes very possible to make this happen across the school year. You can also use it as an exit interview too. They're in Arizona, they're actually having a graduation requirement that they have to present to the business community their portfolio, what they've done, and do the same conversation and where they're going. And I have to tell you, people are just on fire. They want to see where these students go now because they're so excited to see what's happening. Then the business community's on board because they know you are graduating students with the skills that they've been complaining about because they're seeing it. So again, this is a very, very powerful opportunity, very much building on what you just described, starting with video, talking, but then building a whole presentation that they can give to their parents, that they can give to community leaders and things like that. It's very, very powerful. Okay, let's talk about career immersion. So we're talking about paid and unpaid work-based learning experiences, apprenticeships, co-ops, community service activities. This is where we're learning about the world of work by doing the world of work kinds of activities. So we're engaging in a deeper level, and we're building those employability skills directly. So we're not just learning about, now we're learning through, okay, through the world of work. And creating some of those is great. And the badges become a great way also of conceptualizing that. What are the competencies you're developing? Not what grade did you get, not how long you sat in class. What are the competencies, and can you demonstrate for me that you have those competencies? Our State Department has put together a fantastic connecting activities set of resources that you have to get back into, because it is amazing in helping this process. They have a whole report that you can check off what those competencies are in a verifiable way, so the student can then put that in their portfolio and say, yep, I did it. So the employer can participate in that whole process and verify they've got it. All you have to do as a school is figure out what do we want to call a badge, and what are the competencies and things they need to show. But the structure is in place for you to do this. So you've got great resources behind you. And in our workbook, we point out a lot of places where you can go for that. And we want to talk about academic, college, and career planning now. So this is the third section. We've talked about the personal, social, emotional, and social emotional learning. We've talked about career education, career development education as career awareness, career exploration, career immersion. Now we're talking about academic, college, and career planning. What about this whole idea? How are we getting them thinking about their future? So that's what we're talking about now. Academic planning would be the 4-year course plan that they need to have. We want that to be tied to their idea of post-school. What are their goals? What we're also interested in is what areas of self-disclosure might we be engaged in, and then other activities. So what I want you to do is work in, this would be a good time also to turn around. I think we had a different strategy for working in groups that we thought would be a little bit easier to manage. But let's work with another school and have some conversation on this. So how are you already getting youth to think about designing that 4-year plan, thinking about their future, in terms of things? It's not easy helping you think about their future goals. And then what are the ways that teachers are participating in that? What kind of self-disclosure are you ready, are teachers maybe doing? Let me remind you that the teacher sharing their own experience is one of the more powerful caring components, because it communicates to the students that they must be worth something. Why else would this teacher be telling me about their life? It's very powerful. It also lets them see that if you could be lost and then eventually be found, maybe I can too, right? Because they can't even imagine that a teacher may have gone in 4 different career directions, or may have ever felt lack of confidence in something. The self-disclosure, the what do I wish I had known when I'm sitting here, and why am I teaching you this because I care and this is what my life was like, it's a very powerful piece. So we need to help our teachers do self-disclosure. But I'm also going to suggest that you want to script it out a bit. We don't need to hear all the things about the teachers' lives. And we have a few out there who have some boundary challenges. You know who they are. I'm not going to go into my high school thing, but it is on video if you ever want to hear some of my stories. Oh my goodness. So yeah, we know that some of our teachers are going to need some structure for that conversation, but the idea really is to help make it real for the students and really make that happen. And get them going. And we also do not want to even begin to think that it's easy to think about the future. For some of our students, getting home is their future, right? Getting home from school. So I know that, okay? And I know the challenges a lot of our youth face. I also know that for the other ones, it's, what clothes do I want to wear to school tomorrow? And, I got to be prepared, and what dance is coming up. So they're all focused on the present. They're not focused on future. We have to help them engineer that. And that's what this process becomes. MassCore is our friend, because it's helping us help them align their courses towards opportunities. They also need to double, triple check that the particular post-secondary pathway is aligned to that MassCore. There may be something missing. One of my worst experiences was the school counselor telling this very talented African-American student who I was working with, didn't know that she had told him this, but said, yeah, you don't need to take that other calculus class to graduate. She didn't say to graduate, but that's what she was thinking. So when we went to the Milwaukee School of Engineering, they said, wow, if only you had taken that calculus class, we would have let you in. Yeah, That's what we're trying to avoid. And it's not the school counselor's fault. We want the student to drive this. We want them to know that. So it's their ability to recognize the math core. When this young woman in Wisconsin went back and started taking math and science, she naturally, and this is what we found nationally, once they get that goal, they start navigating a more rigorous course schedule to get there. Math core is our first step. We want to help them see it, understand it, make up the credits to get back on it, right? And we want to support that. So if we have new structures to create, that credit recovery and helping them really move towards that, really important. So, so big fan of the math core. We want to be, we've got a lot of great tools within the online system for them to compare colleges. It gives them huge amounts of information. What does it cost? How hard is it to get in? What sports? What's the student life like? All kinds of information that they can use. We want them to be also focusing on the financial literacy aspects. What will it cost if I don't get a financial aid package? And so is it better to start with the 2-year? At least let me look at that as an option prior to the 4-year. Is it really a credential and certificate that I need as opposed to the 4-year? These are all issues about financial literacy that we need them to be thinking about, and we need career advising activities to make that happen. So we're talking like around that 11th grade, thinking about bringing this in. I don't know if you're aware of this because it just happened, but our state has finally gotten us a FAFSA completion system so that you can know on a daily basis, I assume daily, I could be wrong, but I think it's daily, weekly. So I'm not going to go in the online system because we're right at the lunch hour, but what I want to be able to do is to say that when you go in to these activities, we want them to be comparing their post-secondary options. And when we use the word post-secondary, we're talking college and career, right? And what we're saying is you got to have some competencies. Who knew? If you're going to find jobs with livable wages, there is competencies involved, but it doesn't necessarily mean a 4-year degree. It may, but also remember that because they're focused on a 2-year degree doesn't mean that's the end. That becomes the on-ramp that now, and maybe it's their children that now have a better opportunity. Maybe as they get older, they realize, oh, I know what I have to do to be able to do that, because we've taught them how to navigate through these systems that are available to them throughout their lifespan. And then the other piece is that we want to be focused on what they can do right now in high school. There are credentials and activities they can get, because when they do, they now realize they have talent. And once they realize they have talent, they're more motivated, more proactive, more engaged. That becomes the whole storyline that we're getting.
I just want to say that we're really excited that you are here. We've been working on this whole career development plan idea with a career plan for about 10 years. We, many years ago, were actually at the State House knocking on doors, talking to legislators, asking to help support the fact that we really need to have career plans for our kids. It took about 10 years, nothing happened, and finally, right before Deval Patrick left office, he signed something that put together a committee to study it. So that was kind of the impetus for us to be here. We're just really excited that you're here, that you're working with us, with the school counselors and your schools, because we really want this because we think it's really best for kids, and that's really what we're all in business for. So thanks for being here, and thanks for supporting the students in your district.
Thank you. And really a special thanks to MASCA from us data people who have shown us so much love in trying to get the word out there about all these tools that we've been trying to produce for you in the field. I'm Niall Fuentes. I'm from the Office of College, Career, and Technical Education. I work with Keith and Shayla and Lisa here. And I am a data evangelist. My colleague as well, Jen Appleyard, and we go pulpit to pulpit trying to bring people to the love of data. Now, when I talk about data, a lot of you here, from the department will think about your MCAS scores, things of that nature, kind of a lot of information that comes out. A lot of it's used as a headline. A lot of you heard the speech before, right, Catherine? It's as a headline or kind of as, a stick. That's not the way we're going to talk about data today. We're going to talk about something that is usable, something that works into your college and career advising framework and helps you make good decisions to serve kids. And that's the most important thing. Once told by a school superintendent, for those of you who know what an N is, it's a number of things in statistics. N equals 1. The most important thing is that one kid that's right in front of you at that time. And we get that. But at the same time, we have a lot of information to offer from the department level about, to we call big data to give you. And when you're thinking about data in this piece, you're going to think about data as just another piece of information, right? We all like information. We all make decisions based on knowledge and not just on instinct. This is the whole idea of using all these information to make good pieces. So you have this big data here. You have MCAS. You have EWIS. We'll be talking a little about that. Anyone here use EWIS? All right, we're getting there. We're going to show you lots of different tools about post-secondary outcomes, college reports, so we know where our kids do go after they leave high school, what happens to them. And we're taking this big data, we're using local data you might have. You might have local tests, that type of thing. And there's a third big piece that I think a lot of you bring to this conversation. A lot of what Scott is talking about is kind of what you know about that student. You know more about that kid than in big data will ever know. You know his boyfriend or his girlfriend, if they're in a gang, if they live in a particular town, they have transportation problems, are they a foster student, are they homeless, did their parents get divorced? You have all sorts of information about these students' lives, about their personalities that we will never have in our systems. But we believe that using these kind of triangle of data, that it creates a synergy that you can make really good decisions for your kids. So that's kind of my evangelism to start off with. Jen's going to do most of this presentation, but I'm going to do a little bit. So Scott, before he jumped in and tried to ruin what I was going to talk about, was talking a little bit about FAFSA. And we're going to jump around a little bit. I want to show you kind of what the actual FAFSA reports look like. Back in February, have any of you used the FAFSA reports in Edwin? Let me back it up a bit. Edwin is a data warehouse of all sorts of information. Most of you probably go there if you're an MCAS coordinator for your school, which I know many counselors are and many school administrators. You go there to get those data, right? You get the student level data around MCAS scores. In that warehouse, we also have early learning indicator systems, post-secondary reports. For those of you with English language learners, we have access reports. Tons of different pieces of information that are put in this warehouse. In February, we added something new, and it was called the FAFSA report. FAFSA, as you know, is the free application for federal student aid. And when you're thinking about college and career advising, it is really about eliminating yet another barrier for kids accessing higher education. So what this tool does is we collect data from the US Department of Education around FAFSA completion, saying, have kids completed a FAFSA? So Joaquin comes up to you and goes, Mister, I did that already, and you know I did. It's like, well, Joaquin, it's not showing up here. You have a chance to check if he actually did that. There are some false negatives in here. Sometimes a kid might complete it and it doesn't show up because of a matching error, but you'll never get a false positive. You'll never have a kid that actually didn't do it that shows up like they did. Does that make sense? There's some problems in matching because we use a SACID, a student identifier, and they use social security numbers. And if you have Jacqueline and Jackie, sometimes that won't match. We're trying to improve those matches this year. But anyway, so this FAFSA report is in near real time. It's done weekly. It's done through something called your SIF reporting. As you report data in, we match it with stuff from the feds, and we report it back to you on a weekly basis. And this is kind of what it looks like. We used Malden here. If you have the right level of access in Edwin, you can get down to the student level. This particular report would be available to everyone in your district, and it gives you an idea of the number of students in your district, in this case 454, this is for last year. Current data is being uploaded now, so in November, we'll have up-to-date data. We know that the window opened up October 1st, but not many kids have really done it yet, I don't think. Have you had kids who have done FAFSA already? Wow. Yeah. So as in November, we'll start rolling in here, and you'll be able to go on and see current kids. But you can see the number of submitted, the number of those who are complete, and the number of those who are incomplete. You can see here, you get the information about, you have the SACID, and anytime you see a blue link like this, it's pretty cool. You click on that link, and it'll bring up something called a student profile report, and it will tell you everything about that kid that we have on the state level. MCAS scores, course taking, attendance, what schools they're in. Particularly for new kids, this can be very valuable. If you haven't gotten transcripts from the sending school, if they're in Massachusetts public schools, there's going to be information about those students in here. But as far as FAFSA goes, it gives you an idea of whether they submitted the FAFSA, whether it was complete, and for those that were incomplete, you can kind of see the reason why. So sometimes it will be like, Joaquin, you didn't sign it, or there's a mismatch here or something like that. So it gives you some basic level of information about what that looks like. What this allows you to do is follow up with that individual student, The kind of aggregate report lets you understand the idea like, wow, only 40% of our kids have done this. We're looking at 8, we want to get it up to 80. So you might have another FAFSA night or something like that and reach out to a multitude of students. So that's kind of what the FAFSA report is, and really that's to look at that barrier in around affordability for a lot of students. So now we're going to switch bases. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure we got that information out there because it is really relevant to what you're doing for MyCap and that type of thing. So why dig deeper? And this is our basic data presentation. Again, totally switching gears here. This is something we call the waterfall. What we're going to do here is we're going to, again, talk about the biggest pieces of data in your school, right? We're talking about a very wide range of things that are happening to all students across your school. The point of CCA and MyCap really is to get down to that individual level. So we are going to go from this big level. We're going to look at maybe some subgroups, like are you having issues with male students? Are your African American students? Are your students with disabilities? Where do some of the issues lie? So we're going to look at some of our big gaps, both opportunity gaps, meaning what are we not doing for kids, and achievement gaps, meaning what are the outcomes for kids. So there's two different things that we're really talking about. You always want to look at those achievement gaps first to see where those outcome gaps are, and then really start to look at the opportunity gaps so you can really understand what your input gaps are, if that makes sense. So here is a statewide way of looking at this, and this is this is kind of the pipeline. This is the waterfall. All these 100 students that entered together in the year 2010, 2011. When we get into DART and Jen does her exercise, you'll be able to look at this for your own school. Those that graduated, so again, that's a big part of it. How do we get kids out the door of our schools, meeting all the graduation, state and local graduation requirements? What are the percentages that enroll in college after high school? So how many of those kids are going on to post-secondary education? And then afterwards, what higher ed calls persistence, what I would call retention, we call persistence. How many of those students continue on to a second year? When you open up your own DART, you'll be able to look at, for kids quite a while ago, how many of those actually graduated from college. So you might have there's some schools that have very high percentages of kids who enroll in college, but those kids never continue and certainly never finish. So it's just another way of looking at this data in a big way. Why we really dig deeper, though, is again looking at these subgroups. Here's where we really see the issues. We have some kids that are doing quite well in all schools. Kids that are performing at a very high level, going on to great post-secondary outcomes. On the other hand, we have kids that are struggling. We have some really poor academic outcomes for kids. So when we're looking at these data, again, you're going to look at the big picture, you're going to go down. So when you think of me, think like this. Big muscular guy with a thin waist. Not really. Let me go on. All right, so now we're going to ask you to get into DART. For those of you who have Chromebooks, see if you can partner with someone who does not have a Chromebook. If you don't have Excel on your Macintosh computer, Apple computer, you might have to look on with someone as well. This is an Excel-based tool. Again, I'll go back to the start so you can kind of get the instructions for those of you. So here's the front page of the DART. So is everyone who has DART or looking along with someone here? If you look up in this left-hand corner, you can see how to choose a school. See right here? Choose any school you want. Hopefully your own, to start to look at these information. And then if you really want to, you can look at a comparable school. The ones that are up top are really schools that are kind of like the school that you chose, usually around the same size. So up here in the green piece, you're going to sign on to your school if you can find it. Hopefully many of you can. I'll put in a comparable school just for the heck of it. I know there's some Brockton folks here, so I'll use Brockton. So if you look right below this, it gives you kind of some basic information about some comparable schools. Your school will be in orange, plus schools that are kind of like you in size. Some of these schools are so huge that there's no one like them, other than these kind of smaller schools. Give you an idea of the population distribution, and then kind of some basic information about high school outcomes, MCAS, mass core completion, dropout rates, graduation rates, things of that. So that's the big snapshot of what these schools look like. But the beauty of this tool is on the bottom piece of this, where all these tabs are. And you can look at things like high school indicators, program of study, which will give you information about kind of course taking, MCAS, Mass Corps, things of that nature. But what we're going to concentrate on really today is this post-secondary outcomes one. So this is the post-secondary outcomes page. It gives you an idea of kind of what your kids are doing after they graduate from high school. In every one of these charts, you always have a graph and a table. So it's great to adapt if you're doing a presentation at a school committee meeting or for your own school or for a faculty meeting or something like that, that you can grab this information fairly quickly and fairly accurately based on what you report to us. A lot of these data, just to let you know, around the college going is around National Student Clearinghouse, which captures about 97% of college goers across the country. So you're going to find most of your kids there. You're going to find any kid that's in a certificate program, a 2-year program, or a 4-year program. So you're going to get those certificate kids too that are going to community college. You will find those kids as enrolled. This first chart really is, again, the waterfall, which I showed you earlier. It gives a description of kind of, how many kids start, how many of them graduate within 5 years, how many of them go to college immediately, and how many of them persist. Below that, you're going to see this is the graduation one. So you can kind of see here, statewide, of 100 ninth graders who entered in a graduation cohort of 2009, only 37% of them got degrees, 2 or 4-year degrees, within 6 years of graduation. So you can kind of compare yourself. All these charts let yourself compare yourself to the state. Another part that's kind of cool is there are some subgroups up top. So if you want to look at a specific student population, you can kind of look at that and kind of disaggregate. So if we want to look at students with disabilities, it's going to give you an idea of how many of those kids are graduating and going on to college and persisting. So it's a pretty cool way of looking at all these information. The other pieces that are in post-secondary education include, again, that's kids that are graduated from college. You'll get the idea of kids who enroll right away. So this is the idea of how many kids enroll immediate fall. These are all longitudinal. So if you know, like, oh man, that class 2017, they were terrible. You can kind of look at it over a certain number of years to see what your data look like. And kind of, again, we're talking about this in the college and career advising perspective, using these data to figure out who you're going to target, how you're going to figure this out, and who might need a little bit more help to kind of get along, particularly if kids are planning on going to post-secondary education. One person on Wednesday told me from a school district that they were going to try to reverse engineer. They were going to look at the kids who didn't go to college and try to figure out, besides the kind of data that we send you, what were some aspects of those kids' lives? What was going on that might have stopped them from attending higher education? Other pieces that are in here include, again, the completion, things like kids that are going on to remedial education, kids that are going into 2 and 4 years. So this little chart here with the green and blue color give you an idea of how many of your kids are going on to a 2-year versus a 4-year. And then kids who persist, and again, the remediation piece. So kids who are taking remedial classes are those kids who are unprepared to take coursework in subjects that they probably should have learned in high school. So this gets to the ideas like our math and English classes in particular preparing kids to move forward. All right. This being said, there are much more detailed reports that Jen's going to talk about briefly in Edwin that get into these post-secondary reports that you can even get down to the individual student level, and you can see whether Johnny, who said he was going to Dartmouth, went to UMass Dartmouth or to Dartmouth College. You can kind of prove, either one's fine, and you can prove those little flags you put outside your office and see if it's actually true and see if those kids actually went there. And did they stay there and did they graduate, which is another measure of our success. Our kind of point of the day, and these technical difficulties are kind of frustrating, but is to really start to develop what Lisa called a wow moment, to look at some of these data and figure out like, wow, I had no idea that was going on. If you're in DART, please start to look at your post-secondary outcomes. If you can't get to that tab, we'll have someone go around and help you. And we want you to look at some of the outcomes for student subgroups. Look at your, if you have a particular high number of African American, Latino students, Asian students, white students, look at those subgroups. Look at your low income or economically disadvantaged group, see if they have gaps that are there. Look for some aha moments in all these different areas in post-secondary outcomes. And try to come up with something that's concerning. And we're going to ask someone to find a wow moment. We're going to ask 3 people to find a wow moment in their data. A wow moment. A wow, like I didn't know that. That's so interesting. How is that happening? That's going kind of against what my preliminary thinking was about college enrollment. Why we need career plans? Because we have lower levels than we think of kids that are going on and being successful in higher education. And it's figuring out how to target and to begin with is really important. There's a strategic way of looking at this in the use of data and a tactical way. What I really encourage you when you use these data is that you have regular people at the table. People that might be afraid of numbers, they think they are, they get really overwhelmed. Get those people at the table, show them how easy it is to look at these data and to start to have a conversation. They're integral to this. The people that know the kids, the people that might be your out-of-school partners that are helping you to get kids into college and good post-secondary outcomes are important to have around that table. Again, this is aggregate data. That means it's all pushed together. When you get into Edwin, you can always start to, and Jen is going to talk about this right now, kind of talk about that student level data that can help you make decisions within the MyCap and college and career advising framework.
Maybe I'll just hit a couple of other highlights just because there was so much activity on these juicy DART charts that I want to touch on a couple pieces in case they got lost as you were diving into some of the details. So going back to the homepage, that's where you select your school, and then there are all these other sheets that have additional information about your school, the historical perspective. So sometimes, like a lot of your day-to-day is crafting plans going forward. Sometimes before we go forward or make plans for going forward, it's helpful to see where we've been or where, go backwards a bit to see where we have been. And that's the value of some of these charts here. The context tab has lots of basics about your school: enrollment, student/counselor ratios, things like that. The high school indicators has attendance rate and some details about chronic absenteeism. And then further down, there's also info about dropout rates and graduation rates, promotion rate from 9th grade to 10th grade, and the historical trends there, so 4 and 5 years back. Program of study is also juicy too. Specifically, the second chart shows the percentage of students who passed all their 9th grade courses. So the 9th graders in each grade, what percentage of those passed all grade 9 courses? Because we know there's a lot of research that indicates students who fail a course in 9th grade, it could be a core course or it could be an elective. If they fail a course in 9th grade, they have a lower likelihood of graduating in 4 years or in 5 years. So that having a really strong foundation in 9th grade, we know is so important. So you can see that historical view here. Earlier, Scott mentioned the idea of encouraging students to have goals in STEM. We can also see what percentage of 12th graders have taken a math course, or what percentage of 12th graders have taken a science course. That's also here. The high school performance tab has info about MCAS, and then further down, some really neat trends about the percentage of students who took AP courses or who passed the AP tests in different subjects. So, and then we spent a lot of time on the post-secondary outcomes page. So there's a lot of juicy things here that you can take back and really build that historical perspective as you understand your current situation and craft those plans going forward. We also wanted to tell you a little bit more about the early warning system, or the early warning indicator system, EWIS. So we won't pull up these reports yet, but I want to just kind of connect this, make you aware of these and connect them to the DART work that you just looked at. So that Excel spreadsheet, that's a tool called the DART, or the Success After High School DART, and that showed the percentage of students who, fall off this curve or don't make these particular milestones in the past, like how that's looked in the past. EWIS is this really neat prediction tool that predicts for students in classes currently what their likelihood is that they won't make these milestones. So for students who are in school right now, we can say, we've made this prediction, this calculation that says this student is at high risk of not being ready. Everything we know about them tells us they might not graduate on time. Or everything we know about them tells us they might not enroll in college after high school. They might They might be very likely to do these two things, but not be likely to do this. So we can predict down to the student based on their last year's information those likelihoods. And that's what the early warning system is all about. Now, where is that? That's in Edwin. Could you raise your hands if you've used Edwin before for anything? All right, so like half of you have used Edwin. Raise your hand if you've used EWIS and looked at the EWIS reports. All right, great. So definitely a strong core of people have used it, and even more who can look at it if you want to following this. So this is an example, and I know that this is small, but you've got your handouts that have illustrations of this if you want to look at your handout. So this report, even as we were doing the earlier exercise, someone was already going into Edwin and looking up the EWIS reports for their students. This report shows every row is a student, and every column has something that we know about their student from last year's data collections, what courses they took, which courses they passed, what their attendance rates were, whether they took a foreign language or an advanced course like a IB or AP or early college course, and we can put all that together to say, therefore, they're likely to not graduate on, or they're not likely to graduate on time, or they're very likely to graduate in 4 or 5 years, in 4 years rather. So we can see all those details in the EWIS reports. And the thinking is that that can launch you on a path to understand why the students might be at risk. The reports tell us that they're at risk, but it doesn't tell us why they're at risk. So our thinking is that if you put that with your expertise about your students, you know the context that they're in, you know the additional information about what, like their surroundings, their teachers, and things like that, you can put together a story or begin to understand with your knowledge and the local information in your local data systems, you can maybe begin to understand why that student's at risk and then take steps to address them. These are just a few examples of students who have, right here, these data show these are students that are proficient or advanced in their MCAS subjects. These are all, I think this example was 11th graders, and they're all proficient and advanced in MCAS, yet their courses, a lot of them are passing courses, a few of them are failing a course here and there, although they're proficient in MCAS in those 3 subjects, and they're maybe not taking a foreign language or not taking advanced coursework. So some of that might indicate, are these students maybe not being challenged by the courses that they're in, or could it be more interesting for them if they took different courses? So that's just among the kind of questions you can ask as you look at these data. Here are a couple of basics about EWIS. One is that, I think I mentioned this, but we calculate this prediction, this EWIS risk level, for every student in Massachusetts public schools, or for every student who was in the public schools last year, because we use their last year data. So for every student who was in the school last year, and we can predict their likelihood starting in grade 1. And these are the different milestones that we're predicting. We're predicting that they're at risk of missing these. So for students in grades 1, 2, or 3, we can say they're either on track or they're at risk of missing the 3rd grade milestone of reading by the end of 3rd grade, or being proficient at meeting or exceeding expectations in the 3rd grade MCAS. And the same for all these other milestones. So for students who are in grades 7, 8, and 9, we can say that they're at risk of being high school ready. They're at risk of failing at least one of their 9th grade courses, even when they're in 7th grade. So, with that information, schools can intervene, counselors can work with teachers could work with the department, their content specialists to help craft either experiences or lessons or other supports, other interventions to help bring those students on track so that they meet those milestones. And the reports are all in Edwin. And then the last idea is that using this information in this sort of ongoing cycle throughout the year, identifying who's at risk, addressing that early, and then monitoring that throughout the year, monitoring that using their attendance and behavior and other course indicators throughout the year, can tell if students are beginning to get on track or if they're still off track and more like there's maybe other supports needed. So all of this is just like we're dipping our toes in the water of the reports that are available in Edwin, but it gives you a sense of what's possible. So here are a few other resources if you want to bookmark the EWIS page or come back to it later on, and a few other EWIS and other data use kind of opportunities that we have around this. Any other question as we finish up this data part? So because of confidentiality reasons, we're not putting the students' IDs here, but in the EWIS reports, right here you'd see their SACID and their name, and in Edwin, the SACID is hyperlinked, so if you click on it, it expands to this like 10-page report that shows their schools that they've attended the whole time they've been in Massachusetts Public Schools, and that's where it has their MCAS, and not just last year's MCAS, but their historical MCAS, their access scores, and things like that. We have SAT. We don't have PSAT, but we do have SAT. And also the courses that they're taking and the grades in those courses, and then a couple of other there's like 30 measurements total of it. It's quite a bit of information that go into all of these calculations. And all of those are in the reports if you download the reports. Okay, thanks everyone. I know that data is just a small piece of why you're here, but hopefully that gives you a sense of some of the resources available.
This is from the DART data, and this was something that we used in the 6-year plan report to try to help convince the state that we needed to look at this whole MyCap and CCA. This data is your leverage point to say we have something we need to work on. It allows us to help our teachers realize they're more than the subject matter they're teaching. We're trying to help prepare our youth to be successful, not just here, but as they go along. It turns out that all of those social emotional learning skills, entering that post-secondary with a purpose, these are critical components that relate to whether or not they finish. And we all have areas where we can work. We were just talking about with Brookline, and they've got certainly a high percentage that are going and completing, but they have a high percentage that are not. And they have high property taxes that are supporting the quality of what's happening. So this data is really critical in telling our story, but it's also a way of figuring out where in that pipeline we may be missing, right? So it may be that we're missing on attendance in some areas. It may be that they are graduating, but are they entering college with a purpose? Are they reaching their true potential? And parents want to know that too, and so do the students. So the data part really becomes critical to this, and I'm really glad that they were able to give us a chance to look through that. We can do more on this. We have some, Niall and I have a webinar we did more on the DART data. We'll talk as a group. We'll be debriefing to see what additional supports we can give you. We also recognize that some of your principals are not here, and you're going to want them to hear these messages at some point, so we'll be talking about how we can help do a webinar that allows them to see it, and we'll record these so that way they're available even if they didn't have the time. So what I'm wanting to say in that is that this is more of a conversation. We're wanting to support you in the work you're about to do, and today was the visionary piece. We're trying to get a full picture going, but we recognize that there's going to be lots of questions and lots of unique pieces that are going to be shared by all of you. So we're going to want to learn what those are as we go along and prepare information. We've also been coordinating with, is it MASA? And they're part of our, we have a group that's working quarterly on this. And MASCA is a big part of it, and Katie Gray and others, as well as the State Department. So they're aware of it, and we've been trying to figure out the communication channels of how to get to those things. So definitely it's necessary, and we want to figure out how to do that. So one of the cool things that Niall's been doing when he's not out hanging out with us is he's been putting together a whole development program, and Jen too. Professional development is designed to really help build the competencies, and so definitely get your school counselors out to get through some of that training so that they'll have some of these other more technical skills on that. So that training's been going on now for over a year, and it's been really well received. We're really excited about it. Okay. Whew, we're not going to learn anything else, okay? This was a heavy lift. We did a lot, and you guys were great. And I apologize for the technology. I did try all of my counseling empathic skills, but it didn't bring the internet along in any way at all. So I'll have to figure out some new skill sets. So what we want to do now is have you work on your kind of scope and sequence. But the way we're going to work on it isn't the actual scope and sequence. We want you to take a look at this curriculum mapping. If you go onto your Google Classroom, you will find a copy. We want you to use that to write out what you're doing right now. We've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. What are you doing already? And where does it fit currently in these 4 years and under what topics. We also want you to look in the back of your guide, because in the back of the guide, we have these really cool, a lot of work. Please thank your State Department. Send them nice Christmas cards and other holiday cards, because they worked hard on this. This is a really cool piece that's a template for you to look at for the whole CCA program in MyCap. So we said that we need to build this out. Here's an example, 9 through 12. So while you're also looking through and starting to put together what you're already doing, we want you to refer to this, because this is where we're going. When we come back next time for workshop 2, you're going to be working on this, okay? You're going to only be working at a single grade level. We'll talk more about that in a minute when you're done with this. But we want you to spend some time on this right now. So you need to get into your Google Classroom, drop down the file, or work on the file in the Google Classroom, and you're going to be filling it in online. We're going to try to create a community of practice here. We don't want you rewriting and retyping. We want to do it all in one shot. You have to talk amongst yourselves to be able to do this. Yes? I did. So Google Classroom, if you have Google Classroom and you're trying to log in, it's not going to let you. This Google Classroom is separate from your school, so you have to log in with a Gmail email. Yeah, log in with a personal Gmail account and you'll be able to get right in. Oh boy. Oh, it has to not be your school account, your school email account. So it can be a personal email or Gmail. What were some things that you found that maybe you're doing too much of, too little of, not at the right time? More immersion before they're seniors. Start the immersion by junior year, right? No later than? Yeah, absolutely. Good call. What else? How's that self-exploration activities working out? Do we have them in there? Yeah, are they in there in the 9th grade? And really starting with connecting activities as an overall resource will kind of help think through different strategies for that. So let's talk about it. There were a few things around the room that I chatted with people about. One is, it's really hard when you're doing this not to be thinking so far ahead. How are we going to do this? Where is it going to happen? Who's going to give? How are we going to get buy-in? How are we going to get people to really understand this? I know, we all know, that's down the road. We are going to help with that, and we're going to take it step at a time. So the first step is the vision. That's what we're doing today, and it does feel overwhelming to think about all that. When we come back next time, what we want to do is, let me just kind of put into the homework piece so you can kind of see that. We want you to finish the curriculum mapping, okay, so you can see really where you're at as a school. It means going back to your larger team, make sure you've got everything in there. We want you to look at those scope and sequence documents we gave you, the larger ones with all the stuff filled in, to really think through, is there a grade level we want to start with? This is not going to work if you try to go whole school in one shot. You got to build your own capacity to do this work. You got to find your choir. Can't start it by trying to sell. You got to be able to have ideas and people say, ooh, that looks exciting, can I do this? We need leadership on board. It's not just about you. We know this, school counselors, right? We're never respected in our own home, right? Someone from the outside comes in and says, hey, this is really cool for school counselors. Oh, that's a great idea, we should do that. And you find out, right, you've been doing it for 12 years. So the point of it is that we're going to be working with you to help make that happen. And we're planning between 2 and 3 at least to have a webinar type thing with leadership to try to help them really understand what the value is. You will be spending time between workshop 2 and 3 saying, what are you going to give us? Okay? What are the parameters that we're going to work with? So that when you come into workshop 3, you're going to work within the parameters that your school has decided, and we're going to build out an implementation plan from there. Okay? And part of that implementation plan will be communication materials. How do we explain what we're doing, and how do we evaluate what we're doing in a way that helps people understand the impact we're having? And I call it telling a story. The data part's important, but so are the stories. You know, when we look at this nationally, and the research we did, we had more than one girl in more than one state. When we asked how was the ILP, they said, because of the ILP, I have a better relationship with my mother. Same exact phrase. We got up to give testimony here in Massachusetts for why it is we need to do the ILP, and the first thing this senior got up and said, because of the ILP, I have a better relationship with my mother. That's powerful stuff. That's more, this is what Niall was saying, that's about an N of 1. Sometimes it's the impact on that one that tells a bigger story than the data points. That's part of what we're going to be collecting as well and thinking through. How do we get those stories? How do we get parents saying that this is a place that's launching adults? You know, how do we get teachers saying this is why I went into teaching? You know, I always thought it would be this kind of mentoring, and I finally get a chance to do that. I'm not just focused on content. I get to be with a whole person and try to support them. These are the things that happen during the story making when we ask people their reactions to what's going on, okay? So it's gonna be helping you build that out. And so what I'm asking for is sort of that kind of patience to say, we're taking it a step at a time with a full understanding that we need to get all of these pieces done. The first piece is, you gotta learn your system, okay? What you'll find in the back of your career advising piece, should be page 71, 72, and probably 73. What it has is it's a list of what nationally the standards group has said, this is what good systems should have. So I'd like for you to use this as part of your detail list, that when you're going through your system, you're either looking for webinars that your vendors have already done, maybe calling them to say, hey, we've got some questions, can we get an hour with you to do a webinar? To really look through your system and see how it works. You're also wanting to understand how your system maps on to the kinds of activities we've been talking about. How can we focus on looking at their talent, not just doing career interest assessments? What are the activities we have around career awareness exploration? The comparison features, things like that. So that when you come back into workshop 2, you've got a general, not a perfect, we're building capacity here. You've got a general idea of what's going on in your system. Then, taking a look at this workbook, okay, one second. Taking a look at this booklet that we just gave you, this big monster, and your online system, we're going to begin to construct one grade level of curriculum, okay? And we want to keep thinking, though, about that whole scope, because you want to think about the objectives across the 4 years, but you're only going to start on one of those. But think about that. You're working with 9th grade, you're working with 10th, you're working with 11th, you're working with 12th. You're all in the same Google Classroom. So you're going to be able to share each other's materials and see what others have done. So we're going to be building, but collectively we're going to have all of this consultation and support. Question 1 and then 2. Yes? So you answered my question. Did I answer? Good. See how good that was? Answered a question I didn't even know. Other questions, or did that get to it? Okay. So we're going to go along then with the idea that this second session is really going to be helping us focus on that single grade level so we can dig down. We're helping build your capacity for how to think about the design of this. Obviously, after that, you're going to need to start fleshing out a wider curriculum. By the 3rd workshop, that's when you'll know where we're going to start, okay, and how much we're going to do, with a full understanding that we've got to build that community to understand what's happening, and we'll try to support you as well. So you're not hearing lots of prescription. You're hearing lots of ideas. You're hearing about best practices. You're hearing about multiple options. We were just talking about integrating this all the way through English class and other classes and things like that. Others are talking advisory. Others will talk about a health class. There's multiple ways this can happen. You have to figure out with your community how it's going to work, how we can make it start, how we can start this out, okay, within your own. And we're not going to be making judgments. That's not the point. The point is to kind of get it started and then let us all collectively see how it's working. Shayla and Lisa, did I miss something? Wow, I nailed it. That is outstanding. Feeling good about that. It's really exciting. I have to say, I think we're all very excited about today. This was really fun for us. I hope you liked it too, but we had a great time. The energy is great. We want this to be a conversation. You've got questions. You've got things that aren't clear. You need to let us know. We'll either create the FAQ list and get it right back out. We'll create a webinar if a big topic comes up that really seems to be central to what's going on. But remember that it's a conversation, and we really do want to support you. We have lots more resources around you. We just didn't want to overwhelm you, right? We didn't want to overwhelm at all today. But we do have lots of other resources to support you as we move forward.